Morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. Unfortunately, we could not get down to the friendly city. It's one of those cities we always love visiting. But our company's decided to be responsible, and obviously with the crisis we're in, it's best that we're not all gathered in one place. So thank you once again for joining us, and let's kick off. So let me first start by introducing you to Vodafone and Vodafone Business. A lot of people know Vodacom, but perhaps don't know our full business, and our major shareholder being Vodafone. So we have presence in 25 Vodafone markets. That's Vodafone-owned companies, as well as 54 partner markets, where we partner with companies either due to legislation or an asset share requirement or whatever. We're the second largest telecom operator in the world, covering 534 million customers, and have presence in 74 countries with over 100,000 employees. IoT is currently a big game changer in our business, and recently we just went over the 100 million connected devices, so it's a big part of our business also. Our vision is to connect people, places, and things, and help organizations succeed in the digital world. And that's whether it's on a mobile network, fixed network, or whatever kind of connection our customers need. Our Vodacom Business, and here is where we go over and above just the mobile network as well as the fiber network. That's actually the base of what we provide. We also provide communication services, voice over IP services, collaboration services. So how do we use various products in collaboration and then consolidate? Everything is coming into the cloud now, and that's where we're going to focus on today. But our consolidation of data, the data that flows through our networks, is the starting point for your digital journey. So we have a digital services business. As I mentioned, IoT being a big play in our business, and I'll touch on some of that some more, as well as our professional services components that we provide, where we have highly skilled people that are able to assist our customers with the digitalization of their businesses. So our strategy, as I said, is built on the importance of data, and cloud being more prevalent than before and growing at a substantial rate. We're able to provide our customers services on any cloud, really. So whether it's a hosted cloud in our data centers, private cloud, or the public cloud, such as Azure, we have the skills and the services to actually provide our customers with these platforms and add value to their requirements. So a lot of that, where we're looking at now, especially if you have a look at the digital services that come out of the collection of that data, is that we provide solutions to our customers for specific industries. Our industry verticals I'll touch on just now, but we're very focused in providing industry-focused services to our customers. The platforms that we have various subsidiary partner companies that provide the specialized skills on top of our platforms. If we have a look at IoT.Next, it speaks for themselves with very strong IoT orchestration capabilities. Mezzanine, which is down in the Western Cape, who provides agricultural and educational services for our customers and platforms. Afrigis is another one of our subsidiaries, which provides capability in the GIS space, and where we map and understand the movement of people, the location of people, and how we plan our networks around where those people are, as well as how we sell this data to customers so they can plan whether they're putting a mall up or whether they're putting marketing boards up, all focused on the movement of population. And then ThingWorx being a platform that we use for aggregating and visualizing data that comes out of our IoT platforms. So these areas in the industry sector, I'll speak basically about retail. I mean, for ourselves, with over 40 million customers in South Africa, and the movement of these customers, is extremely important that we understand where these customers are, and for a number of reasons. Whether it's to upsell or service our customers, being in the right place to look after our customers is very important, and also how we actually prioritize where the network capability should be. So for instance, when people are on holiday, we need to make sure in those areas that they've traveled to that we have enough capability to serve our customers. So in that area, on the analytics as a service ourselves, we process about 13 petabytes of data on a monthly basis, understanding the trends that our customers are going through and their service needs. Over and above that, we have solutions such as utilities and energy management, where we're able to place sensors into properties, make sure that the air conditioners and so on are operating viably, and reduce costs where possible. So across all of these industries, we have solutions for our customers. So just to touch on the agenda today, JK from Microsoft will come up next and actually present on the Azure platform. After that, we'll have a quick coffee break. Then I'll be back for a bit of a chat around SAP and Azure. After that, Ian from Dell will present around Azure Stack, and we'll close off with something that's very interesting. Over the last few days that we did the Roadshow, I learned a lot around Microsoft and the Office 365 products that they got there. So stick around for that. You'll definitely learn something. So thank you once again for joining us. Sit back and learn a lot. Thank you very much today. Do you want to give that water?
Ready. Okay, good morning, everyone. My name's JK. Good morning, everyone. My name's JK from Microsoft. Glad to be here today with you. Although we can't be in person, we want to make sure that we share with you some great insight and capabilities around the Microsoft Azure platform. I think firstly, just thank you to Nexio and Vodacom, who are great partners, and also to Dell as well in terms of the journey that we're on with cloud. So you can see my social media details up there. If you want to connect with me on Twitter or LinkedIn, feel free to do so. Today, I really want to focus on a couple of key things. We want to talk a little bit about the market conditions and what's happening in the market around cloud. We're going to go into some detail around the Microsoft Azure platform and the capabilities and the hundreds of services there. And then we're going to spend some time also just looking at some of the backup and disaster recovery facilities that we offer. But before we do that, let's start with a quick video.
The cloud presents an opportunity for every organization to embrace digital transformation. But innovating in a complex landscape presents many challenges.
At Nedbank, we needed to be more agile, more client-focused, more competitive, and even more digitally focused than we've ever been.
Customers in Africa and around the world are choosing Microsoft to deliver secure, reliable, cost-effective cloud services. Microsoft is the first provider to launch cloud data centers on the continent, bringing technology closer to local businesses and organizations.
Since we saw the opportunity to use Azure, it's taken us less than 4 weeks to actually implement a full working system.
By implementing Azure Recovery, we focus on what's important to us and our customers, which is our services. Recovery time went from days to only 1 hour and 30 minutes without human intervention.
Microsoft with its Azure services is a great strategic fit, not only because Microsoft has got an in-depth understanding of Nedbank's technology landscape, but they understand our strategy, they understand our current technology environment, they truly understand our aspirations for our digital goals for the continent and our clients.
Azure, cloud for Africa, cloud for all.
So in the video, you could see some great examples of customers that are gaining benefit from Azure and the services available, Nedbank and some of the others which we'll go into detail in later on. I wanted to start off and just talk a little bit about the market and what we're seeing the South African market. So the slide you see up here is a view of the IT market in South Africa end to end. So the first thing you'll notice is that the IT industry is growing at 11%, which is much better than the overall economy, which is positive. However, what's really interesting is when you drill into it, you can look here and see that from a cloud point of view, cloud is growing almost 40%. Right? So that shows you a lot of customers like the Nedbanks, the Peace Parks, eThekwini's are adopting cloud at a significant rate. And cloud will grow to a $1 billion business this year alone. And then we also noticed that the on-prem software environment is starting to decline and really stagnating in terms of that. So again, that's an indicator of what's happening. Now, if we double click on kind of the cloud landscape, we see some very interesting stats, as you can see up on the screen from a market insights point of view. We can see the top 3 areas of cloud that are growing. First of all, our infrastructure as a service, which I think is no surprise to customers. The second one is really around the data platform. So a lot of customers are going on a journey of modernizing their data estates, moving their data from on-prem into the cloud and being able to build, next generation capability around data insights and leveraging the power of AI. And then the third area is really quite interesting as well, which is platform as a service other, which really incorporates a lot of the open source communities. So as Microsoft, we have a huge partnership with some of the open source vendors like Redis, Red Hat, SUSE, etc., and we're seeing tremendous growth in that. And then at the bottom of the screen, you can see in terms of the on-prem world, we find that a lot of customers are moving their on-prem virtualization into the cloud. And from an ERP point of view, around SAP, moving SAP landscape, Sage landscape, as well as Cispro into the Azure cloud, which is quite exciting and drives big cost savings for customers. So what all these customers have in common is they're on a journey of digital transformation. And I love this slide because it talks about, how digital disruption has really changed the world as we know it. So if you look at the American index, the S&P 500, what's very interesting to notice is to see kind of the tenure of companies on that index. So if we look at the 1920s, economies were stable, there wasn't a lot of digital disruption, and the average lifespan of a company on that index was 67 years. So quite long, consistent run on the index. If we move forward into the 1980s, we'll notice that the lifespan of a company on the index has dropped down to 25 years. So if you think back to the 80s, apart from your favorite bands that you liked, it was really about, starting to see a global economy, companies competing with each other across geos, etc., and technology really coming to the forefront in terms of driving digital disruption. Now, if we forward to the 2010s, it's even scarier. The average lifespan drops down to 15 years, right? So now we're in the area of the Teslas of the world, the Ubers, the Airbnbs, which really started disrupting and leveraging technology. It didn't have a lot of capex, that was locked in, so they could do some very innovative and creative things. What's scary for us in the next 10 years is that if you look at this index, only 25% of the companies on the index today will remain there. And 75% will be new entrants into the market, which tells us there's a lot of competition. And therefore, if you're not disrupting yourself, most likely another organization is going to disrupt the industry that you're in. So that's just some food for thought in terms of how digital transformation is changing the landscape. So you might say that's all fair and well. What about local? So let's look at some local examples. Right. So first of all, hopefully there's lots of Springbok fans out there. And we're quite proud of the fact that we are the official cloud sponsor for the Springbok team. We've been on an amazing journey with them, with Rassie and the team, around really building capability that we feel allow them to win the World Cup, powered by Azure. And let me share a little bit of insight with you. So we worked with an ISV called Mobi, which is a company in Cape Town that really helped the Springbok team analyze and build digital capability. So the first thing they did is they went and analyzed 6,000 games and put 40 million data points in Azure, which in itself is a huge task. And from that then, the coaching team was able to leverage that insight and leverage that information in terms of analyzing games, in terms of driving real-time analytics, etc. And with the power of Azure and using quite a few of the services in Azure, including machine learning, they were able to build some models and really to start, optimizing the way they're doing the coaching, the way they're giving feedback to the players, and also preparing against the competition, which was quite important. And looking forward, apart from winning the World Cup, now they're looking at things like augmented reality and a fan-based app that will give really good insights for us as Springbok fans in terms of engaging with your favorite players, and working with the power of IoT to connect stadiums, to have smart stadiums for a great experience. So really looking forward to what they'll be able to do in future as well. So you might say, fair well, that's sport. What about business? So let's look at a couple of examples around business transformation. So the Altron Group, led by Mteto and Yati, has done a tremendous turnaround from a family-based business, which was struggling at one point, to really becoming a digital leader. And the first thing that he drove as part of this culture was to really focus on leveraging the power of public cloud. In fact, him along with his leadership team decided for their new premises that they would not build a data center and they would not invest in on-prem capability. And so the day after we launched Azure in South Africa, they put not only their HR but also their payroll system into public cloud, which is quite a bit of trust in terms of being able to do that. And they continue to drive innovation through their group companies and really leverage the cost savings from cloud to plow into innovation in the business. So I think a great example of digital transformation in business. Another one which you probably saw on the video is Nedbank. So Nedbank is interesting because they've been driving a lot of data center migration with us. And you heard Mike in the video talk about what that's mean for them from an agility point of view. But they are literally taking all their on-premises data center servers and moving them into virtual machines and platform as a service, and really doing this at scale as the first bank in the country to really embrace the public cloud journey extensively. So another great example of how digital transformation is driving change in business. From a government point of view, as Microsoft, we're quite proud of the fact that we signed a memorandum of understanding with CETA, so that public sector customers, both nationally and local government, are able to leverage the power of Azure. And you can see here is a highlight of the announcement. One of the key examples in terms of what that agreement has meant is Limpopo Health, where we've been working with one of our partners in terms of implementing AI for patient management. So doing facial recognition, medicine dispensary, and really preventing things like fraud in terms of medicine, and which is of great benefit to the government itself. And this is being rolled out across many clinics in Limpopo now, which is very exciting, and really starts driving solutions for some of the challenges we have as a country today. So we're very bullish about what the capability for government means and how we can assist government in terms of their transformation, as the President has said as well. One last example maybe before we go into some detail around Azure is we recently announced that Standard Bank has decided, together with Microsoft and SAP, to move their on-prem SAP into Azure and to run this at mission-critical scale. And we're very excited about the possibilities. And later today, you're going to have a session all around SAP on Azure and what that means for you as well. So what all these customers have in common is that they have been on a transformation journey. And we really feel there are three key areas that you need to focus on in terms of that. The first is an enablement, making sure that you have the right team, the right skills, the right partnerships in place, and that you're also training not just your IT staff, but your employees as well in terms of being able to embrace and leverage cloud. The second is making sure that you have a strong migration path or a business plan that maps out how you're going to drive cost savings, how you're going to drive optimization, and ultimately, how you're going to achieve the migration journey. And then the third area is really around innovation and making sure that you are, as you build next generation capability, whether it's applications or services, that you're leveraging the power of cloud and the hundreds of services available in Azure today. And so let's go into some detail around what that means. So first of all, it's been a year since we've opened our data centers in South Africa. We're very proud of the fact that we're the first hyperscaler to be on the continent. And you can see the two dots there at the southern point of Africa. Those are our two data centers in Joburg and Cape Town. However, what's important to note is that this forms part of a region of 54 data center regions across the globe and gives you interconnectivity between all of these. So whether you're a local customer only interested in connecting locally, or if you're an international company you have the choice to put your data and your services in different data centers across the globe. So it really gives you the power of scale. Not only that, but we are very focused on compliance. And it's important, to make sure that you're fully compliant in terms of your journey to the cloud. Apart from Azure, we've also announced Office 365. So later today, you're going to have a session on Office 365. But Office 365 is running out of the local data centers. And we're in final plans to make sure we can also bring the power of Dynamics 365 to the local data centers. And there'll be an announcement in the near future around that capability as well, which really then gives you the power of all three clouds in terms of your journey and your different applications and areas that you want to take to the cloud. This is just a list of all the Azure services that we run today out of our data center. So the left-hand column, you'll see the foundational services. We are fully complete and fully deployed. In terms of the mainstream services, we brought in a lot of the advanced workloads. So for example, the M series, which is the biggest and most powerful VMs that we have, that allows you to run SAP on Azure. We've brought in some of the cognitive services and some of the AI capability, and we continue to progress that with some of the advanced services to make sure that you have choice in terms of your journey to the cloud. And then in the remainder of the year, we have a very clear roadmap. We release services on a quarterly basis, so make sure that you get the updates in terms of what's coming so you can plan accordingly. I often get the question about, why did we invest in local data centers? And I think there's really three key areas there. The first is around compliance. So if you're in the financial industry or if you're in government, there's very strict compliance that you have to adhere to, right? The second is in terms of making sure that your data is resident, right? So in terms of the models and the services that you design, to make sure that you adhere to data residency and what that means for you as an organization, whether you're a commercial or a public sector customer. But most importantly as well is around performance. Customers that were connecting into the European data centers previously shared with that it was very difficult to run mission critical systems out of the Dublin and Amsterdam data centers, and they would often experience a 180 millisecond plus delay in terms of connectivity. Where if the local data centers, you're down to 15, 20 milliseconds, so a really great experience in terms of being able to run the big workloads like SAP on Azure. And those are really kind of the key areas that we focused on when we decided to invest in the local data centers. It's also important to note that we are by far the most compliant hyperscaler out there from a trust point of view, and all the regulatory bodies. You can see here, these are over 90 compliances that we adhere to globally. So every one of the 54 regions have to go through checks for these to make sure that you have the guarantee that your data is safe, that you can trust Microsoft in terms of that journey to the cloud. If you go to microsoft.com/trust center, you'll find that there's a wealth of information around this, including how we audit our data centers today. So that's available for you on the public website. A couple of other websites just to be aware of as well. So as we release new services and capability for Azure, apart from the hundreds that are there already, if you go to azure.com/updates, it will show you a roadmap of everything that we're working on that's in private preview, etc., as we develop our R&D around our products and services. And the other one is if you want to see which services are running specifically for the Africa region, you can go to azure.com/products by region, and it'll show you a nice view of that table I showed you earlier, where it shows you exactly what services are currently available and what's coming in terms of the coming quarters. So make sure you reference that as you plan out your data and your migration strategy to Azure. I briefly touched on enablement earlier, and I think it's very important to note that skilling is absolutely key in terms of driving success to the cloud. And as Microsoft, we're investing a lot of money to make sure both customers and partners are able to skill in this regard. From a recent survey that was done around skilling, you'll find that for sub-Saharan Africa, there's really some key areas that stand out where companies feel they need help with in terms of skilling. It's around big data analytics, around cloud computing, around machine learning, and everything app-related. Those were the top 4 or 5 areas of focus. So taking that into consideration, what Microsoft has done is we've released a public website that's free to all our customers and partners. If you go to cloudsociety.microsoft.com, you'll see all the details there. You can sign up, and there are hundreds of courses available for you to both do self-skilling and also train your teams around that. We've got a variety of courses there, everything from basic cloud platform, all the way through to things like security, modern workplace, Office 365, and even for app developers. We have some great capability there in terms of making sure that you build the necessary skills. And then what's also important around data and AI is to make sure that your teams are trained around that, and we have some resources available there as well. Just to share with you around the Azure role-based training. So a lot of our customers that are on the journey are making sure they're also accrediting and certifying their people as part of that. So even in Microsoft, everyone in the company is responsible for doing Azure Fundamentals, or AZ900 as we call it. I'd encourage you as a good starting point to look at that. And then you can break out on role-based training, whether it's a security engineer, a developer, an AI specialist, all the way through to solutions architects, to make sure that you can build the skills there. And we've also got investments programs where we're helping customers, not just with free training, but also with exam vouchers. So reach out to your Microsoft account team if that's something that you're interested in today. So we had a quick look at digital transformation and what that means around some of the skilling components. Let's get into some detail around data center migration. So the first point is everyone that starts on a data center migration has a different entry point. And what you see here are some common scenarios that are driving the migration decision for customers. So some customers, like the Eltrons of the world, have decided to expire their data center contracts, right? Or expire their on-prem data centers. For others, they've acquired additional companies, and they quickly need to integrate those acquisitions into the overall IT strategy. Some have urgent needs, based on business demands up and down. They have urgent need to burst out, and so public cloud becomes very nice in terms of that agility journey. And then for others, it's around security and compliance. The fact that we are so secure and so compliant in terms of our regions gives customers great choice in terms of that. And then the last couple are really around building innovative applications or cloud-native applications and software end of life. So if you're today a customer running Windows Server 2008 or SQL 2008, those software packages have come to end of support, right? And therefore, you have the opportunity to move those into Azure and extend your support by 3 years. So it's a quick way to deal with the situation so that you can do some longer-term optimized planning. When it comes to applications, there's also a lot of choices to be made. Most companies start off to say, am I able to rehost this application? So take the on-prem application and move it into Azure in a virtual machine. Others are saying, can we do a couple of tweaks to it? Can we actually put the application in a container and move it to platform as a service, which gives us some optimization. And then for some very old applications, you'd probably have to re-architect that and rebuild the application. And that's really where it gets complex. We'd probably need to get some advanced capability from our partner ecosystem involved. We could probably spend a whole morning just talking about the application migration strategy and what you need to do there. But it's a very important part to consider. It's not just about moving the infrastructure, it's about also, what's your application journey look like. So those are some of the choices that you have today. Right, from a platform point of view, there are a lot of different capabilities. You saw the list of services. Let's go into a little bit more detail around what that looks like. And the first question I get from customers often is, what does this hyperscale environment look like? And to kind of represent this visually, I think this is kind of a nice slide that will show you kind of end to end. So it starts with the underlying hardware infrastructure, which we source from our partners like Dell, etc., and build these at very large scale, right? And then it's about the compute, storage, and networking capability that sits behind there. So software-defined networking, express route, etc. From a storage point of view, all the different choices you have. But where it gets really exciting is once we go beyond the infrastructure layer around the hundreds of services and the platform capabilities. If we look at analytics and IoT, the power of using things like machine learning out of the box, data factory, some of the mobile components, there are so many different things that you can look at. In terms of the data context, being able to leverage whether it's SQL Server, MongoDB, MariaDB, whatever your choice is in terms of database infrastructure, you have an endless list of capabilities there. And then to build the integration and some of the media services component on top of that is where it really gets exciting, where you can drive innovation in terms of your organization. From a developer experience point of view, we've made huge investments. Apart from Visual Studio Online, with the acquisition of GitHub, we have a wealth of open source libraries and codes available for everyone. And then we wrap all of this together with very strong security and management capability and the operational capability. So we have things like Azure Cost Management that allows you to manage your costs and your spend month to month in terms of cloud. Some of the strong security capability, which I'll go into detail on, things like Sentinel, Microsoft Security Center, that really gives you a great hybrid experience, not just in terms of the cloud itself, but also in your on-prem environment. So you can see there's a huge variety of services that are there for you today. From a storage point of view, maybe just to briefly touch on some of the things there. So you have access both to standard and premium storage for your VMs. So obviously for the high-performing VMs, we have premium storage, which gives you faster SSD drive capability. From an object storage point of view, making sure we can do things like blob storage, do things like backup. So when we talk about backup and recovery later, this is one of the key areas that we look at around object storage. And then some old applications still require like a file share access. So having file storage and proper file share access for legacy apps, etc., is one of the key things as well. And then as customers drive their migration to the journey and move their data, it's also about transporting the data, how to import and export the data, and some of the capabilities that we have around that today is very exciting to help you in terms of replication, file sync, etc. So there's a wealth of things to look at, and I'd encourage you to go into the Azure portal and go read up on this before you make some of the key decisions around your storage needs. If we look at the computing capability, we have everything from entry-level VMs all the way through to the most advanced, most optimized VMs built by our partners. So one of the things that's very exciting is the purpose-built capability that we have with the likes of SAP, NetApp, SUSE, lots of our partners in the ecosystem to make sure as a customer you can literally select that and get a fully optimized, best performing workload for your environment. We continue to also roll out some of the additional VM types in the local data center, so a huge variety of selection for you as far as that's concerned. As part of your journey to the cloud, it's also important to look at your network environment and to make some key decisions around network. The worst thing you can do as a customer today is use your existing network as it is and try to have a great cloud experience. You need to look at things like software-defined networking, and leverage some of the capability that our networking partners have built around caching and acceleration. So it's important to work with your networking team to look at virtual firewalls, virtual routers, and also not just on-prem, but as you connect via your carrier into the internet. To help you with some of that decision-making, these are kind of the 4 journeys that we see customers go on when they start looking at Azure. So the first is just literally using your internet connection to connect into Azure, right? Using public-facing IPs, etc. It's very quick to set this up based on current connectivity. Then, as customers mature, we see them going down the different paths, and most customers are ending up at what we call the express route connectivity. And this is where our partners, Nexio and Vodacom, are very strong in terms of helping you with some of these decisions, but making sure you've got private connectivity into the Azure space and the Office 365 space so that you can run your mission-critical workloads, encrypted, secure, and also get quality of service along the way. The Azure Marketplace is something that is also very important in terms of your journey. If you think of it as the App Store equivalent, so today on your mobile phone, if you go to the iOS or Android App Store, you have a selection of apps you can download. The Azure Marketplace works in the same principle. So whether you're looking for an operating system, a database, or some storage and backup capability, we worked with key partners across the globe to make sure that you have a great experience. So for example, if you're designing a software-defined network, you can go and look at Cisco, Citrix, Barracuda, Palo Alto. They all have solutions in the marketplace that you can literally click and download and consume in your environment, and that really helps you accelerate your journey to the cloud. Apart from that as well, in terms of open source, we're actively working on our open source partnerships to make sure you have a great experience and a great selection of open source partners. One example maybe is if we look at infrastructure, if you download a Red Hat image from the marketplace and use in your environment, and let's say you run into a problem and you log a service request, what's so good about the relationship that we have in place is that you actually speak to a Red Hat engineer in the back end. It's not a Microsoft engineer, it's actually a Red Hat engineer. So you're getting that first line support that you deserve in terms of your open source journey. And we're quite proud of the investments and the partnerships that we've got in place that will help you and give you choice. What's interesting about our local data centers as well in terms of Azure is we run more open source workloads than we do Windows workloads today. So it shows you, how customers are taking advantage of these partnerships in terms of their migration journey. What's very important for enterprise customers is that you have the required service levels and the connectivity that you can share back with business. So it starts, so we have a comprehensive SLA in place, whether it's a single VM that you run where you get 3 nines uptime out of the box, all the way through to the most advanced interconnected region capability. And depending on the high availability config that you choose, your availability increases. So if you're looking at doing things like availability sets, having multiple sets within a data center, we have that option for you today. If you look at availability zones and being able to spread your risk across multiple regions, we also have that capability today. So you really have the power of choice in terms of making sure that you can provide high uptime, high quality experience to your customer base, as well as your internal organization. Security is a key area for us. We make a huge amount of investment in terms of security annually, $1 billion of investment to make sure that you have a secure experience. If we look at the news today in terms of so many customers are being exposed, and there are cybersecurity crime syndicates across the globe. So it's a very important part of your journey to the cloud. And I want to share with you a little bit of insight just in terms of what we're doing around security. So first of all, whether you're on your device or you're in an application or you're connecting to infrastructure in the cloud, we take an end-to-end approach in terms of security. So we make sure from a device point of view, we can scan and check the device. From an application or a user point of view, we have some Office 365 security capability, some compliance capability that allow you to deal with that. And then when you go to the cloud, we have Azure Security Sentinel, Azure Security Center and Sentinel that gives you a great capability as well. An underlying capability that ties all of this together is what we call the intelligent security graph. And maybe just to visualize for you what that looks like. So we have connected all our back-end capabilities, whether it's the hundreds of cloud services that we run, or Active Directory, or the different devices. And you can see some of the stats here. We scan 1.2 billion devices a month across the globe, right? Now, we triage all these signals in the back end and to make sure that we can only share back the detailed information that you need in terms of your environment. So a lot of work going into this to make sure that you have a seamless security experience. Some of the building blocks for security that we have in place today, you can see here under identity and access management, we have things like Active Directory. For Azure, we have multi-factor authentication that allows you to do more strict security, role-based access control. And these are all capabilities that are there out of the box for you today. If we look at network security in terms of application gateway, firewalls, etc., DDoS protection, and then express route, these are all building blocks that allow you to have a good networking experience as you venture to the cloud. And then lastly, around threat protection and security management, you can see some of the investments we made around anti-malware, log analytics. And the one I want to drill a little bit into is Azure Sentinel, which is our latest service. So we recently announced Azure Sentinel as a SIEM product, which basically allows you to, first of all, collect information across both your on-prem environment as well as your cloud. It allows you to detect potential threats to the environment. It allows you to look at how to respond to those, and you can build custom rules around that. And then it integrates with a lot of native tools, not just Office 365, where you're able to bring your data in for free, but also some of your third-party tools that you've invested in to connect them together. And the best part about Sentinel is it's literally a pay-as-you-go model, so you only pay for what you use. And in the back end, it's powered by artificial intelligence as well, which we'll drill into a little bit. The beauty about Sentinel, and the feedback from customers are phenomenal. They say, literally go into the Azure portal, turn it on, I point it to my on-prem environment, I connect my cloud environment, and it just starts building some of the insights for me. The most key thing is that it reduces alert fatigue by 90%. And because we have things like pre-built machine learning models that sit in the background and correlation rules, it really trims down on the amount of noise in the environment. So you're only getting the absolute key things that you need. You're also able to build some of your own models, which is exciting for customers that want to do some custom analysis and capability there. So I'd really encourage you to take a look at that. How it all ties together from a security point of view, as you can see here, you see the intelligent security graph ecosystem with all the partners that are involved as well. It then ties into Azure Sentinel, and you can tie this either into your security operations center if you run your own, or we have partners that offer a managed service for you in that regard. So great experience end to end and a lot of choice for you. In terms of some of the resources that we have things like the Cloud Adoption Framework, the Azure Migration Program, and as well as Fast Track. So these are investments that we've made that help you accelerate your journey to the cloud. So briefly just want to touch on each one of those. So the Cloud Adoption Framework is really a set of governance and plans and tools that allow you to focus on the people, process, and technology component. So it helps you define your business case for cloud. It helps you with some of the key decisions that you need to make sure you build your scaffolding out and you build the environment the best way right out of the box. And it also allows you to put some governance principles in place. So for example, how do you do cost management across departments? It deals with situations like that to make sure that you're making all the right decisions. The Azure Migrate is then a tool set that sits behind this that allows you to then do things like migration. So it allows you to take on-prem machines and migrate them to VMs in the cloud. It does both physical to virtual. It also does database migration, and it can even help you if you're planning to migrate across hyperscalers. So if you have some workloads in AWS today that you want to migrate to Azure, you're able to do so as well. And it connects into a lot of the assessment tools in the back end, so Carbonite, Cloudomize, Turbonomics, and Unify Cloud, and use that output in terms of planning the migration so that you have a successful experience. As part of the resources we offer customers as well is we have a program called Fast Track for Azure, which gives you direct access to our engineering teams. The only requirement is that you do one of these workloads that are here today, which are quite comprehensive. So whether you're doing server migration, data analytics, building cloud-native apps, you're able to then log a request where you get access directly to our engineering teams, and they can share with you some best practices based on reviewing your plans and your architecture to make sure you have a successful journey to the cloud. So I encourage you to leverage this, and we're seeing a lot of customers driving their projects and their decisions based off the back of this great program. And then the last area of investment that we're also doing is the Azure Migration Program itself in the MEA context, Middle East, Africa. We have a program where there's some funding available for customers. So if you are going to do data center migration, we have not just all the enablement resources and the migration tools, but we also have partners that are specializing in this that can give you an accelerated journey. And if you're interested in that, you can send an email to the meaamp@microsoft.com alias, and we'll reach out to you in terms of that. Something that's also important when customers make decisions around cloud is to understand your benefits and what you're able to do. If you are a Microsoft licensed customer today and you have license mobility as part of that, it's also important to point out that if you're going to run SQL, for example, it is far more cost effective to run that on Azure than it is our competitor. Because you're able to repurpose that on-prem license into the cloud, it drives significant cost savings. And you can see 5x cheaper than our competitors. So make sure you go look at aka.ms, why 5x more, to give you some insights around Windows Server and SQL Server savings as part of that journey. And now I want to play a quick video to show you what's possible, in terms of putting all these tools and resources together and how our customers had a great experience in terms of their migration journey.
Your work processes, they impact the efficiency and footprint throughout the company. Via digital transformation, we can now rethink the way we do work in our organization. Exaro is one of the biggest coal-producing companies in South Africa. What do we want to do? We want to power better lives in Africa by responsibly investing in commodities. So our new pivot is looking at new renewable energies, moving away from coal. And when it comes to sustainability, to eliminate the energy footprint, it was to move the infrastructure to the cloud. So therefore, we designed the new building without a data center. We're looking for a trusted, reliable data network to replace our own, and we could connect all our mining sites. That way, in dispersed rural locations where connectivity was an issue.
When they've got an application to deploy, it takes between 6 to 12 weeks minimum. With Azure, deployment is a minute, and that's one of the agility they were looking for, to say, how do we respond to forever increasing business demand? And Azure enables that because of its agility, its scale, and its level of security that is unmatched.
We were really pressed for time and needed to do the migration as fast as possible with as little as impact as possible in order to meet that timeline. So it was quite heavy. And once we actually migrated, the first comments that the users had is that the system is quite fast. So user experience up until today, great. An important factor as well is that minimal business disruption.
All the mines are connected directly to the Azure cloud, cutting out a spoke model where they were connected to the corporate building in the past. We immediately had a cost saving of not replacing infrastructure, which amounted to about 30 million rand as we moved to the Azure cloud. And the idea that we stemmed from day one and embarked on was to create a total digital mine where everything will be digitally connected. The mine will be reporting and stuff will all be through the cloud. And we aim to have autonomous vehicles and all the new technology deployed in this mine. We envisage that it will save us around about 15% on the bottom line of the company.
So now we have the COO and BU managers looking at the company's performance in real time. Engineers now use these data sets to create innovations, and the time to production is a very short time. So for normally a project that would take 6 months, we now do it 3 weeks end-to-end using agile methodology. We don't have to worry about supporting the infrastructure anymore. We now focus our attention on creating ideas, improving efficiency, and reducing the energy footprint, rather than keeping the lights on. Microsoft now keeps the lights on for Exaro.
So I love that quote from the customer where he says, Microsoft is keeping the lights on for the organization. And maybe to recap just on 1 or 2 statements from the video. So the first one was, Exaro was able to save 30 million rand in terms of their infrastructure costs, right? When they built their new head office, they decided not to build a data center. They're putting everything in Azure. The second piece was the agility that they now have, right? In terms of rolling out new software projects, where it used to take 6 to 12 weeks, they can literally do this in days now. Quite powerful testament. And then they're leveraging some of the advanced capability in Azure, like one of the things is digital twins, where they actually build a digital replica of a mine, and they can run scenarios and different permutations in the cloud without affecting production in the mine, which is quite exciting. So I think a great story of how the power of all those assessment tools, the enablement, the investments come together in terms of driving customer success. So in closing off just on our data center migration, one of the key investments that we're making at the moment as well is in a capability called Azure Arc. And Azure Arc is really going to allow you to connect these different environments together. Whether you have these remote locations, like the Xaro example, where there's a mine very far remotely, and using some of the capability around Azure Stack Edge and some of the detail that Ian from Dell is going to talk to you about in terms of the partnership that we're driving with them, all the way through to your on-premise environment, in your corporate head office, and then if you have a multi-cloud environment. So the beauty about Arc, you can even connect AWS and Azure environments together and have a seamless experience in that. So some really powerful capability, and some of the customers doing early adopter testing, the feedback's been very positive on that. So consider that as you look at your environment and the different choices you need to make across your hybrid area of operations. So with that, that concludes our section around data center migration. I hope you found a lot of value out of that, and definitely there are some great resources for you today to leverage. Let's switch gears now, and in the last few minutes talk about how do you go about protecting your environment, and what are some of the things you can do with Azure Backup and some of the disaster recovery components that we have as well. So I think the first thing to highlight, just from a DR as a service point of view, is that if you look at the Gartner research and the Gartner Magic Quadrant, Microsoft is a leader in this space, and a lot of customers don't know that. So we've made huge investments in R&D and working through some of our partnerships, both with the hardware and software vendors, to make sure that we really bring mission-critical capability to this space. And the IDC recently released a great reference study that basically went and looked at customers that were early adopters of Azure Backup and Site Recovery, and what the impact was on their business. And I'd encourage you to go to my LinkedIn profile and download the actual document and read it, because there's some fascinating information in there. If we look at, on average, customers experienced 337% ROI across a 5-year period, right? 46% reduction in TCO, 99% reduction in lost productivity. So the numbers go on, and 76% faster backup to the cloud than what they had on-prem. So really powerful numbers there, and there's some great stats there that you can leverage in terms of helping you make the decisions. So the feedback we get from customers today is when they're building backup and DR capability, it's quite challenging, right, for organizations. And the key drivers behind this is really cost, complexity, and compliance, right? So from a costing point of view, some of the input costs around the resources, the hardware, the data center capability, whether you're doing it on-prem or through a partner. Some of the complexities, if you're an Xaro that has multiple environments, how do you manage that in terms of being able to restore and backups, etc. And then compliance, making sure that you adhere to the strict compliance depending on which industry you're in. So these are things that are keeping IT teams awake at night. So let's see how Azure can help in each one of those. So from a cost point of view, I think the most obvious is that you don't need to buy new hardware, right? You can literally do this in the cloud. We have the storage, the services, the capability that sits there today for you. You also don't have to worry about CapEx expense, right? You can only pay as you go along. So depending on what you need and what you use is what you pay for, which really helps a lot. From a complexity point of view, rolling out a cloud service is much faster than on-prem, so you don't have delays around waiting for hardware, around configuration, etc. And it's very easy to test failover as well. And there are different permutations. As we go into kind of the examples just now, you'll see what you're able to do. And then making sure that you can integrate this as business continuity as a service, so that your organization experiences maximum uptime and prevent risk. From a compliance point of view, obviously, I mentioned all the industry certifications that we have. The ability also to put that data in different areas of the world, because we have over 100 data centers connected worldwide. And it really gives you coverage no matter what your application or infrastructure scenario is. To maybe break it down to look at some of the key areas in terms of driving decisions around business continuity, there are a few key things. The one is we look at backups and what you can do from a backup point of view. We look at disaster recovery. So how do you do disaster recovery across regions and being able to leverage the power of regions around that? And then in terms of high availability, what are some of the decisions that you need to make around that? So the first is, if we look at, I mentioned availability sets earlier, where you're able to, within a data center, create redundancy for your availability sets and your VMs that are running today. Then you can pair different regions together. So you can put, your backup and your data in northern region and pair it, with the west, as we have in the South Africa example. And then the last one that we're busy planning to roll out now is what we call availability zones, where you basically within a region will have 3 separate locations that is outside of a blast radius, where you have 3 different copies of that data, right? That's always highly available. And so for some of our key enterprise customers that are running their business at maximum levels in the cloud, this is something that's really important for them. And we'll be doing some testing with customers in the near future around that. And the idea around availability zones is really that, if you have one of the zones go down, you actually have 2 additional copies out there that are physically separated from a power, network, and application point of view. So it really gives you that highly available scenario to help you protect your data and your business as well. So if we look at just quickly how basically we put this into practice based on some of the backup and site replication capability, I think it's best to take a scenario. If we take an environment where, let's say, we run like a 3-tier application, we've got an on-prem facility sitting in Joburg, we're running it on a hypervisor, we've got a database, and we've got an Apache front end for the web tier, we can very easily replicate that environment in the cloud, right? So you can take your on-prem environment and then you can build the equivalent in Azure. So let's say in this case we choose to go to ZA North, which is the Joburg data center. We can then go and build an exact replica of that environment in the public cloud, right? Continue to run on-prem. Let's say we experience a failure where we have a critical failure at the web layer. If we're not able to recover that, we can seamlessly switch over to the public cloud. So now instead of running it on-prem, we're actually running this in the Azure environment, right? That's the one scenario. The other scenario that we have is, let's say you build the environment in Azure today in one region. Again, with site replication, we can basically build a second copy of that in another region. So we could have the primary running in our Joburg data center, and we could build with site replication the equivalent in West. And if we were to have a failure, then we'd be able to again switch over very seamlessly. So that's quite easy, and out of the box, it's very easy to configure. What's important with your strategy around backup and DR as well is that we have a wealth of partnerships that we've worked on to make sure the investment you've made in terms of your on-prem backup and your DR strategy, that you can extend that into the cloud. So whether today you're a Veritas customer or a Commvault or a Veeam customer, or you're working with IBM or Zerto, etc., you can take that capability and extend that into your journey as you migrate to Azure, and leverage the power of things like Azure Site Recovery as well. So lots of choice there for you. I want to maybe highlight at the beginning of the session, I played the video where the eThekwini team were talking about the benefits that they've received from public cloud and from Azure specifically. And Avinash in the session said that one of the key things for them was being able to use site recovery, and it took their recovery times from days to down to an hour and a half. And I think that really speaks to the power of the services that are available for you in terms of backup and DR planning. And maybe to conclude with, just to look at from that study that I mentioned, the IDC study, we could see that the customers that have invested in this have had significant cost savings, right? 40% more cost savings from the time that they implemented ASR and backup. So I'd encourage you to look at it as one of the easiest areas to enable in terms of your cloud journey. It's also a good place to start to say, how do I take my on-prem stuff and literally just back up in the cloud or build a replica in the cloud. And we're seeing as part of that migration journey that many customers are starting at this point. So please take a look at that and investigate that as well. So with that, that's been a whirlwind tour of, digital transformation, data center migration, some of the assets and resources that we have available, both as Microsoft and as our partners, and then looking at backup and DR and what you're able to do. I'd like to thank you for your time today and enjoy the rest of the sessions. Cool.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a good coffee break. I'm going to introduce you to SAP on Azure and talk a bit around ERP, whether it's SAP or any of the other ERPs on Azure, and the benefits of using the products and services that are in the Azure environment. Sorry. Why are we going the wrong way? Sorry. Sorry, I'm having a bit of a technical problem here. Just want to try and get back to where we are. So our strategy is around data. It's not around infrastructure, but it's around data. Data is actually the commodity that brings an outcome. And with the amount of devices that are growing and the network capabilities, whether we're talking narrowband IoT or 5G, we're seeing a lot more data coming into the environments. Now, the thing is, what do you do with that data? You need to get business outcomes from it. So that is where Vodacom Business's strategy is, holding the data and providing insights and value to our customers on that data. My role within Vodacom is to provide customers with SAP services. So we have a number of customers on our cloud platforms, and I have a technical team of basis engineers that support the customers. So we support customers from the operating system, database, as well as the SAP software using the basis components of SAP. Our journey, we've been in this game for about 6 years now, providing SAP services in the cloud. We provide a full suite of services. So from the actual start of the journey where we come and do the cloud assessments through to running and operating your systems and enhancing them for customers. So we've got a full suite of products in there. We understand that each customer is unique. So our service models are built around the customer's actual needs, where if you're a 24/7 operating customer, we know that we can't just patch you or bring down your systems at any time. We've got to work with you, arrange your service windows according to your company's specific needs. So we don't believe there's a one service fits all. And we customize our services by working with customers and making sure that we fulfill your operational requirements. So the digital platform, and I think what we're sitting at today, we were talking earlier about remote working and what's happening due to this virus. And I think when we look at the digital platform, the digital core, and how people are now going to need to more than ever understand customers, understand the operations, understand your products. If you have a look at what's happening, I've got 2 of my children live in Sydney in Australia. And the stock outs in the shops are horrendous. You've seen the toilet paper episodes that have been out there, but over and above that, it's now getting down to food and commodities that are necessary that are becoming a problem. So this is when data becomes more and more important, and that you get the value of this data and manage to get efficiencies in your operations. And we're going to see, I presume, a lot more machine learning and AI coming out of where we are at the moment, and that we're going to learn a lot from this tragic place where we're at currently with the virus. So why Azure for SAP applications? JK spoke earlier about the infrastructure, and I'm not going to go over that again, but there's a wealth of infrastructure for each and every application and in the SAP stack. Microsoft has a very strong SAP relationship, and over on top of that is the platforms with the insights that I'll touch on a bit more. So what do customers want from cloud? So obviously scalability. You want at the end of the month, when you're doing your month-end processes, that you have optimal compute available, your systems are working as fast as possible. Availability being critical, that if you are a multinational with multiple operations around the world, that you can place workloads where they need to be close to your users or close to your customers. Performance is a guarantee. You've got to be able to have uptime all of the time. And again, management. So as SAP and Microsoft both use these platforms, there's a lot of automation of the scripts and tooling that has been built by these companies, making your work effort a lot easier and a lot more efficient. So what have we seen with customers? I mean, within the development and test environments and training environments for that you can get between a 40 to 75% saving on your TCO. And that's obvious. I mean, if you currently leave these machines running all the time, it's pointless. So switching these machines off when you don't need them and bringing them up when they need it, getting that availability. Disaster recovery, I think, JK spoke about it earlier, but the fact that using Azure, you're able to reprovision in minutes and not in weeks or days. You back up and archiving, these storage costs being 60% savings for you. So also, you cannot get cheaper Windows servers than coming from Microsoft itself. So in essence, all customers gain a lot of benefits from moving into the cloud, into Azure, and being able to optimize their costs on the platforms. So Azure management, as SAP is the ERP of choice within Microsoft. Obviously, they've got a lot of tooling. They've learned a lot. They've built things like blueprints. They've got cost management tools to optimize the infrastructure, and also the access-based, role-based access control using single sign-on and AD and all those kind of products from Microsoft. Monitoring we touched about, but there's Azure Monitoring, Azure Log Analytics, various tools that are looking from the actual infrastructure itself right through the software and checking on the optimization of that. Automation, again, how to bring up that infrastructure automatically, switch it off automatically, using pre-built scripts that have been used and being used globally. And then data protection. Again, JK spoke around Sentinel and the tools that are used in the platform. I'll touch a bit on that now. But data protection being key on every CIO and IT manager's schedule. The Azure Monitor, as I spoke, looks at SAP HANA, which obviously you want HANA working as optimal as possible. That's why you've implemented it. So Microsoft has built specific reporting and monitoring tools that look at HANA and you get your optimal HANA use. Security, I said that it's the key concern of everybody, especially security in the cloud. But when you have a look at the whole range of products that Microsoft brings within the Azure environment, from identity and access management, data protection, network security, threat protection, and the fact that you can build out your own SIEM using Azure Sentinel. Nobody else has such a comprehensive security stack right across your SAP landscape. So we definitely believe Azure security being fully comprehensive and able to support all of your needs. Again, this is a repeat slide, but it highlights that you can go anywhere in the world and you've got the certifications to satisfy local governance requirements with data protection and security, and this being a major factor for SAP customers who use the ERPs as their core business solutions. So why Microsoft and SAP? I mean, they've been working together for over 25 years, integrating SAP and Microsoft, where you can use Microsoft projects integrated to the SAP project system. You can integrate Excel between SAP and your desktop. So they've worked together for a long, long time and understand each other. They're also working on co-innovation currently with cloud platforms and what you're going to do within Leonardo, and making these offerings seamless between both companies and both solutions. So Microsoft uses SAP themselves, and I think this obviously is where it stands fast. They've built their Azure platforms to suit their ERP and HR systems, all their SAP systems that they had. They've migrated 50 terabytes of data into Azure, which is a substantial amount of data that they're operating and managing for them. We all know how big Microsoft is. These employees are working around the globe on these Azure systems. So again, if Microsoft is using Azure to run their SAP environments, I think there's no reason why SAP customers should not be taking that choice also. Data custodian, again, the ability to look at multiple clouds, all the Azure clouds, and where you're looking, you're managing all of your applications, looking at data governance, audit reporting, which is critical to all of us, traceability of who's done what, bringing together SAP's GRC suite as well as Azure's cloud and security components. So bringing those two together is also quite a great sign of the two companies working together to provide solutions. So I'm going to talk a bit about how Vodacom itself actually uses SAP. We're a massive user. We all use it for our SAP Finance. Our HR and payroll is on it. We use SuccessFactors, Concur. So we've a large global SAP customer. In November last year, we, as an organization globally, moved on to SAP HANA. So we've got this experience. Not only do we operate it, we run it. Our business is obviously critical that SAP works for us. And this aligns also to our IoT strategy. I mentioned in the opening that we've just connected over 100 million devices. With that, we're covering multiple industries where we're providing from healthcare, manufacturing, agriculture, all the connectivity and devices, bringing these IoT platforms into place ourselves. So what we have in Vodacom, and using the partnership with SAP, Leonardo, and bringing them intelligent edge, bringing Microsoft's tooling and AI, ML capabilities into our own solutions. So what we had was an issue. We managed 13,000 base stations around the country. You've heard around batteries being stolen from these base stations. We also naturally have to cool these systems, and they're very remote. So how do we have eyes on the base stations, making sure they are operating correctly and providing our customers with the services that they buy from us? So within a base station, there's multiple electronic components, whether it's actual network hardware, air conditioning, monitoring, security, power. It's a mini station that's sitting out there with all these connected things. So we brought them all together, working with IoT.next to bring the data together. And that way we can get remote monitoring across the country. We can see our towers. We understand how they're operating. And we look at how we can optimize them, especially with the cost of power, for instance, today. Why do you want air conditioners running when the temperature is only 20 degrees and the kit only has to operate at 25 degrees? Switch it off remotely. Those were the capabilities we built in. So what we've done is combining the IoT devices, bringing them into SAP's Asset Central asset management solution, and then starting to add AI components on that and machine learning components that we understand the behavior of all of these parts of a base station. With that, when we need a service requirement, need to call a technician out to go to the field, we're able to identify what component has failed in the actual base station from its digital twin. We're able to create an order on Ariba to get the spare parts from the suppliers. And we also provide a works order to the field technician using field glass that they can go out to the actual station and correct it. So we've integrated those SAP modules. We've used the Leonardo platform. We're taking the analytics through the Azure analytics components to provide these insights and the management of these base stations. SAP on Azure, I mean, you just look at that customer list out there, and they're massive global customers in every single industry. So we firmly believe that no matter what industry you're in, there is a solution for you on Azure and with your SAP solution on Azure. The evolution, so obviously starting with your core, you want availability, you want performance, you want security, you want all the stuff that I've spoken about earlier, the basics of keeping your ERP running. But then you start getting the tools that you can actually transform your business, that you can actually ingest all this data, whether it's coming from SAP or other systems, that you're able to, sorry, too many clicks again. But you're able to take those tools, create big data lakes, use the data to get insights, and then integrate them also into tools that we use all the day. LinkedIn, for instance. What are we doing with analytics in LinkedIn? What happens when we're posting jobs? What are people trending about? All of these different aspects that you can go and extend the reach of your business to places you've never gone. And the really cool thing is you're not now buying the software, having to own it for long periods of time. You can go on, use it for what you actually wanted, and then switch it off afterwards. So you're getting your results without having to have this asset base of software that is not being used all of the time. So with Azure Factory, it's both SAP, non-SAP data. You're able to ingest that data, clean it, make sense of it, store it, and then transform it into the presentation layers that you need and model it. Send it to people, whether it's integrated to applications or that you start using it to automate systems like we have done with our platform and our base station management. So again, just to reiterate and close off on this, why Azure for SAP workloads? Because SAP themselves run their systems on Azure, as well as Microsoft running their SAP systems of Azure. You know that these two companies working together, you're getting a platform that is suited for your actual ERP or your SAP solution. The most scale on HANA and across all regions. Remember, Microsoft is the only cloud provider that is actually using SAP themselves and using it on their platform. So that gives us a great feeling there. And then security. Again, it's robust security. You're not buying components all over the place. You're getting security from the actual infrastructure all the way up into your SAP solution to protect you. So at the moment, we're going through the Embrace program with Microsoft. And what that is working together, SAP, Microsoft, and partners like ourselves to actually assist customers moving from their traditional ERPs to move to S/4HANA. So on that, if you are interested, please reach out to us later. We'll come together with Microsoft and SAP and bring you a solution that really makes sense for you, both cost efficiently wise, as well as enhancing your business with the capabilities of S/4HANA. So this is a call to action. Come talk to us about optimizing your landscapes. Let's look at the migration capabilities that we've got and also how the ecosystem will work in your favor. And also talk to us about how we've innovated as a local and a global company using both SAP, Microsoft Azure to give business insights and to run our businesses. So thank you very much for your time today. We're going to quickly change over to Ian, who's going to talk to you now about Azure Stack. And this is great for customers that are looking to get the power capability of Microsoft Azure, but still operate it within their own data centers. Thank you very much, everyone.
Good morning and welcome. I'd like to first of all start by introducing myself. My name is Ian Flanagan, an enterprise architect within the Dell Technologies group of families. I'd like to hark back to one of the points that JK made with regards to the use of data and the value of data in a South African context. And obviously from an Englishman's perspective, that relates to the World Cup. The data and the analytics capability of the Microsoft Azure AI services and machine learning allowed and assisted the Springboks in winning the World Cup. And it's true not just in rugby, but it's also true in the cycling events. It's true in F1 and McLaren from a Dell Technologies perspective. And it's also true with regards to business. The digital business is increasingly reliant upon data. The digital business of tomorrow and the IT transformations that businesses need to go through in using the Azure stack and the Azure cloud are going to drive and ensure that those companies who want to be within that 25% of the remaining, let's call it the South Africa S&P 500, need to use the data and use technologies as a means and a vehicle to survive in the next iteration of what business becomes. What I'd like to do over the next 30 minutes or so is to take some of those conversational points from Grant and from JK and talk to you about the hybridity of the Microsoft Azure environment from an on-premise stack perspective, as well as what that means from a multi-cloud and a multi-cloud management perspective. So, moving on. The new digital customer of today is increasingly young. The anticipation and expectation of our users today is to take our personal life and our personal abilities to integrate and interact with technology and apply that anywhere, anytime, and anyhow to our professional lives as well as to our personal lives, and the two becoming intertwined and integrated between the two. We expect intelligent applications. We expect intelligent data to feed how we are going to interact with our business, be that at a shop or within our enterprise workloads. And that increasingly places a demand both upon the securities of our enterprise as well as the IT organizations who support our businesses in delivering those new applications, those innovative ways of working to an increasingly more demanding user base. The new IT environment needs to be something that is always on and always available. It needs to be fed by real-time analytics so as decisions can be made as to when and how and best to apply patches to keep the environment safe. And then to make sure that the user experience and the user expectation is managed in the same way inside an organization as it is on our personal environment, whereby applications, for instance, we know these from the updates of applications that we receive on our cell phones, our experience is enhanced by 5 updates a week across 10 of our most important interactive user experienced applications. IT essentially needs to mature itself from where it's been over the last 20 years into something that is more attuned to a 24/7 by 365 always on means of and mode of operation. And part of that is embracing the way in which new businesses are adopting cloud services, such as SaaS services. Salesforce.com would be an obvious example of that, as well as using the best-of-breed cloud environments, such as the Microsoft Azure cloud services, and possibly AWS and GCP, as well as all of the other plethora of cloud providers who are out there today who are providing a best-in-class service that organizations want to subscribe to. So it's being able to bring all of those experiences together and maintain and manage them as one. And that in itself talks to the need for a hybrid cloud, something that is seamless, the ability to create an application and extend that application to one or many different cloud footprints. And to write applications in such a way that they don't need extensive rewrite time, months potentially, or years in some instances, in order to get a new feature or a new function or a new application out into the user population, but also at the same time make sure that it is wrapped with the security that today's ever-increasing digital business requires. So the infrastructure, the applications, and the data, as well as the user experience, all need to be considered when a hybrid cloud architecture is defined and discussed. What we see from a Dell's Technologies perspective is that 93% of organizations will deploy a hybrid cloud or a cloud across multiple different locations. That's both on-premise, because we do see the on-premise footprint of a cloud environment as being obviously a logical extension to the cloud, as well as those multiple different endpoints themselves. From our experience and our conversations with the clients, overall we believe that to be an enterprise will consume 5 different clouds on average. Again, between those SaaS consume services to the IaaS, to the PaaS services, to the on-premise, as well as obviously having to make use and manage and maintain the current, I'm going to call it the mess of yesterday. But as we go forward, what does that multi-cloud environment mean? By 2021, 2022, the biggest issue that enterprises and IT organizations are going to face is how do you maintain and how do you manage those multi-cloud experiences? Not all clouds are made the same. Not all ways that you interact and integrate and build and secure those clouds are the same. And what we are doing, or what we're going to expect to see, is the complexity of yesterday without considered thought is just going to be replicated and duplicated into the cloud at a great deal more expense and a great deal more complexity. So thought and consideration should be given to the multi-cloud future within organizations. And part of that, ensuring simplicity or driving simplicity into an organization, which is certainly one of the aspect of IT that should be one of the first things to be thought about, is how do you drive that simplicity? And one of the ways of doing that is to have consistency of your on-premise data center, as well as consistency within the cloud. And that, from an Azure perspective, is achieved by using both the Azure services in the cloud, as obviously very well articulated by JK, as well as using the on-premise Azure Stack environment, which is using the self-same technologies, the same management portals to deliver and develop those application experiences within the organization. And why on-premise? Again, from the conversations we've had, 91% of our customer base believe that their cloud strategy is going to be inclusive of on-premise data center, whilst at the same time 83% of the customers want that consistency of experience from the on-premise to the cloud. We've certainly seen the growth over the last few years of the Azure ecosystem. 54, 55, or 58, it's an ever-increasing number with regards to the number of regions that's been populated and expanded out from a Microsoft perspective. And that in itself is underpinned by hundreds of service providers and tens of thousands of enterprises who are wanting to consume those services that are available, both on the Azure cloud as well as a subset of those within the Azure stack. And it's fair to say that although AWS is the cloud provider that everybody, let's say, aspires or thinks is where they want to be, the Azure cloud footprint is certainly on the ascent. And from a business perspective, probably the most well-described and easiest to be consumed. But what does it do? What's the requirements of building out this hybrid cloud strategy? We can't certainly ignore all of the technologies and the business applications that have driven and created the business to date, and being described here as the legacy of IT. Most organizations, as we say, have and want to become hybrid in their use of IT. But that means that there is a certain understanding of the data, an understanding of the applications, an understanding of how the business interacts with the applications and the data to determine what cloud strategy best suits that application. And it is down to an application. There is, again, no one answer or no one silver bullet that's going to be able to answer all of the enterprise's questions. We've tried to do that over previous iterations of technology. We know that it hasn't worked. So again, as JK made mention, there's various methods and means of understanding, from a refactor and reformatting to rewriting and repurposing an application, or just subscribing to it as a SaaS model, depending upon whether it's a replacement option or a migrate option, depending upon what the criticality of that application is to the organization. As made mention, if the application in itself does not define your organization, does not lead you to having something that allows accelerated growth, then subscribe to it. But at the same time, you also need to make sure that your legacy environment, your mainframe environment, for instance, is maintained during this period of transition. Just to give you a case example from a South Africa context, I was recently speaking to a customer in the finance environment who have an application that's been in existence for 30 plus years on the mainframe, written in COBOL, yet coded in Afrikaans. It's a challenge and a half to think about how they are going to migrate and update and transform that application environment. Every year that goes on, the skill sets from a mainframe perspective on COBOL in South Africa becomes less. Yet the requirements of the business is such that they need to go into some form of transition. And some form of hybrid cloud environment is likely to be their exit point into that application transformation for both that application as well as that business strategy. So understanding this ability, this cloud model from a hybrid perspective is critical to defining what your cloud strategy is going forward. Remember, a cloud strategy in itself is there to offer flexibility to the business. It's not about a single place, it's about giving flexibility to the business to react to business pressures as and when the business demands, in a way that IT historically has not been able to do so. And again, this chart behind me talks about that modernization. What do you need to think about? How can you think about application modernization from the consumptive level all the way down to the legacy level? The percentages on the left in the green here talk about what the current percentages are of those cloud native applications, those new applications versus the legacy. And as we see, 90% are legacy orientated, whilst only 10% are likely to be cloud native. And depending upon that use case, that criticality of the data, the criticality of the business, then certain determinations can be made with regards to how to go about migrating it or modernizing it, such as to give life to the application going forward. So why Azure Stack and Azure Stack specifically in relation to the cloud, the Azure cloud? Well, the whole intent, as I've made mention, is to have consistency and commonality between your on-premise hybrid cloud footprint and your cloud consumptive layer on Azure. And again, from an application development perspective, this PaaS perspective, be it an IaaS or be it a PaaS application, means that application developers who are writing those new applications are able to do so in a way that allows the application to be consistent, irrespective of whether it resides in South Africa North or West or in Europe. Or admittedly, if it's written in such a way that as a PaaS platform, it can exist in an AWS or a GCP cloud as well and still give the consistency of development and the consistency of user experience as a cloud application. So the stack is that subset of the Azure cloud, but within in your data center. It allows IT services at the same time to become more a broker of service with a great deal more confidence. It allows IT operations to be more proactive as opposed to reactive in the delivery of services, being able to measure services, being able to describe and promote PaaS services such as the application developers are able to bring new code and new applications together. And by doing that and delivering it through a service catalog, then equally your end users are able to consume consistent services. And it's the consistency of service which is probably the more important one. After all, it's the consistency of service which has, over the last 5-10 years, allowed the BUs to go out and consume SaaS services because it is consumed in a consistent, costed manner. So we're able to bring that same experience to the infrastructure of today's organizations using the Azure Stack on Dell Technologies. We've touched, both from Grant as well as JK, about what the hub allows you to do, the Azure Stack and the marketplace. So as application developers can go and select those application environments to develop on, depending upon what their personal preferences are. It could be going out and buying those piecemeal subscriptions. It may well be to go to, for instance, a Pivotal environment and subscribe to that on the Azure environment, which is a far more opinionated development environment. But it allows the developers to start developing applications far more rapidly. So flexibility and consistency. So what is the actual Microsoft Azure Stack Hub? As I made mention, it's the on-premise extension of the Azure cloud. And it's a designed approach. It's a built, engineered approach. As such, consider it to be a black box. It incorporates the software, the hardware, again, the services to both support it and to deploy it. It includes the networking. It includes the management console, the HMC console, where patches are downloaded to and then are deployed across the nodes. Essentially, it's purpose-built. It's purpose-built to be a representation of the Azure cloud within your data center. As I made mention, it's engineered. It's defined by Microsoft. This is what it needs to do. This is what it needs to encompass. And then a select number of OEMs have gone forward and partnered with Microsoft in creating that, of which Dell is one of those foremost partners. It's based upon a hyper-converged-based infrastructure, i.e. an ability to modularly grow the environment. So there is no excessive cost that is needing to be borne as and when an upgrade happens or as and when more capacity needs to be added to the stack itself. So that allows for a scale-out building block approach. And it has that Azure consistent management. It uses the Azure Resource Manager as the interaction point. That portal point on Azure is similar to the interaction and management portal point from an Azure Stack perspective. So from a Dell Technologies perspective, what does that see? It sees Dell EMC networking and Power Edge servers brought together. It sees that built on a hyper-converged-based architecture, and then the extensible services framework from Microsoft being able to be applied on top of that. It's managed through the ARM, the Azure Resource Manager, of which you can then subscribe to complementary services from Dell or from other partners that you may have a preference for. And then on top of that, the ability to go into and call down Azure services such as AI and machine learning. But please don't misunderstand me when I say that the Azure Stack is the Azure cloud on premise. It's only a subset of the cloud services that are published. And again, I would very much encourage you to go to the Microsoft Azure site and do a search on Stack, and you can see what services are available to be deployed on the Stack. And again, as with the Azure cloud overall, this is an ever-increasing number of services that are able to be subscribed to and consumed. So what does its scale points? Scale points start off with 4 nodes, scaling up to 16 nodes. And they are now able to be incremented in increments of 1. From a physical perspective, again, we have different kinds of nodes themselves, from balanced scale units, which is very much a hybrid architecture, to all-flash scale units, to compute-heavy nodes. And again, I would encourage you, if you would, to go onto the Dell Technologies site and have a look at the exact configurations of what that means, or give me a shout from my email address, ian.flanagan@dell.com, and then we can have a conversation about the sizing and determining which is the right fit for you. For those organizations who, again, who are looking at getting into a potential development environment on Azure, we also have development nodes as well. And that's designed to say, well, this is the experience that you're likely to undergo when you come onto a stack and then you start to propagate workloads up into the Azure cloud. But understand again, because we are inextricably linked to the Azure cloud, it's important to understand that as Microsoft patches its own cloud on the Azure, it also needs to make sure that the Azure stack within your data center is also patched to N-2 version as well. So you need to, your IS and IT departments need to be understanding that there are certain parameters of control that you may well be giving up in order to be compliant and consistent between your on-premise Azure experience as well as your Azure cloud experience. This chart behind me just talks to really the HCI market overall. It's not specific to the Microsoft Azure environment. But what we're saying here from a Dell Technologies perspective is that our credibility within the HCI market, that hyper-converged infrastructure market, is such that if we were to take our 3 largest or 3 closest competitors and stack their HCI revenues on top of each other, they still are not able to reach the revenue levels that we within Dell Technologies are experiencing. As I say, this is across both the Microsoft environment, the HCI, the Azure HCI environment, as well as from our VMware associated technologies within the Dell Technologies group. So some of the things that we are able to bring as complementary services to the Azure and the Azure Stack environment would be things around, such as CloudLink. CloudLink would talk to the key management services, for instance, within Azure, and ensure that those workloads, that container technology, that data is always secured, such that should it be moved to a region that is outside of your security confidence, then that data would become locked and unable to be accessed, or actually unable to move into that, let's say, a China region or into the US region. For whatever security parameters that you describe it as requiring. It's based on policies, flexible management, and leverages encryption. So again, I would encourage you to go away and have a look at some of these complementary services. Equally, from a stack perspective, we have the likes of technology from Isilon, which is one of our cloud data lake technologies, which allows unstructured data to be brought together so as we can use data analytics against it to determine what is the data sets that are going to drive tomorrow's world. We also have ECS, our Elastic Cloud Storage solutions, which are able to be attached to our stack so as we don't need to move massive terabytes or petabytes of data onto the cloud before we start to use AI and inquisitive technologies to determine where business value can next be identified. We can better do that within the confines of our own premise, our own data center, and then just move the pertinent data onto the cloud. Remember, obviously, the storage that you get within the Azure Stack is a finite amount, yet the data that you are using and potentially going to be driving your business could be 10 times, 100 times that amount that is able to be held in the stack. So far rather use intelligent technologies to bring the amount of data down before you propagate it up into the cloud. And similarly, from a backup perspective, a data protection perspective, Dell Technologies, through the acquisition of EMC, have brought a vast capability of data protection, not just from a backup perspective, but also from a DR perspective. And many organizations, as we're already aware, are complex things to both maintain, manage, backup, and recover from. All because we have this cloud journey ahead of us does not mean to say that we can negate or set aside the way in which we back up and maintain and make available those current systems that drive today's business. And by integrating the DPS solutions from Dell Technologies, we're able to cater for both that mess of yesterday as well as the flexibility of tomorrow. If, however, your solutions from a backup and data protection perspective require technologies such as Veeam at a software level as opposed to the Dell Technologies software, then please, by all means, continue using it. It's certainly very much supported. We've spoken about technology, and JK equally spoke to what is required from an organization and a people process perspective in order to become a cloud business going forward. And again, from a Dell Technologies perspective, that's something that we also not just embrace, but very much support. Organizations need to think about how they change their people in the process, as much about what technologies are best going to underpin their technology going forward. What we see is traditional silos of people across the network, the security, the tools, the storage, the server, and the application development. And as we go forward into a cloud model, be it a singular cloud or a multi-cloud, a hybrid cloud and model, we increasingly become service-orientated. And IT businesses and IT structures need to adapt from the way of which they operated yesterday into something that is more fitting for today's architecture, today's enterprise, and more importantly, tomorrow's cloud-driven business. And from a Dell Technologies perspective, we have 20, 25 years plus worth of experience in delivering change through virtualization and through cloud, both with Microsoft as well as with technologies such as VMware. So as we're able to think about those people changes, those organizational changes, and the impacts that they are going to have in accelerating a technology change within an organization. So taking your infrastructure teams and your application development teams, and I'm sure these are conversations that you're already having around DevOps and DevSecOps, and how you can make a continuous CI/CD process in a traditional environment, a mode 1 and a mode 2 kind of environment, as Gartner would talk to. So again, we have models, as you can see in the slide behind me, that talk to the new areas and the new skill sets that businesses and the business of IT need to give some thought and consideration to. Line of business, traditional application development, and bringing on cloud development and service management teams, and making sure that we close the gap between the application people, the enterprise consumer, and the IT environment, which have been very historically sitting behind dashboards and very insular in their view of what the enterprise actually runs and how it runs. So again, from a Dell Technologies perspective, we're able to give some thought and give consideration and have conversations with yourselves as to how best to structure your organization's IT and business needs. I'm going to touch upon some of the other reasons, again, from a Dell Technologies, or why Dell Technologies on this Microsoft Azure and Azure Stack journey that you may well be considering. One, as I already alluded to, is experience. We've been doing this within Dell for decades. It's almost to the point where when you mention Microsoft, you would probably automatically start to think of Dell. We've been driving Microsoft solutions for many, many, many years already. And again, when you enhance that again with our experiences from VMware, it's Dell Technologies is a safe bet with regards to a technology partner. We were able to obviously bring those learnings across those multiple clouds, across those multiple engagements with a global supply chain, and bring benefit and speed and acceleration to your cloud journey. And again, that experience and that expertise means that your time to value in your day 2 operations can be accelerated, because it's not just about landing some technology in your data center and going, now I'm connected to the cloud. But if you can't maintain it, you can't manage it, and you can't change the mindset of the organization, then it becomes an expensive investment in technology, as opposed to a vehicle for business acceleration. We also understand that the way in which organizations want to increasingly consume technology, from a CapEx to a more OpEx-orientated world, is also one of the drivers to cloud. The expectation to be able to turn things on and turn things off. So what we have within Dell and Dell Financial Services is an ability to bring a more flexible financial model to yourselves, which more mirrors and mimics the cloud consistency model of being able to subscribe to and desubscribe to technology. And again, that's in part expressed here, but again, I would encourage you to have a conversation with ourselves so as we can get down to a specific use case and a specific financial mechanism whereby you can drive the Azure Stack as well as the Azure consumption. It can be averages based. It may well be that you have a percentage of committed capacity and a variance on top of that, which you would then consume. Again, these are just examples. From a services, support, and consumption model, as I made mention, Microsoft and Dell are almost synonymous with each other. And when you work with Dell, then the experience that you get is a one where you come into Dell Technologies and we address your problem. And then only should we need to back off to a Microsoft 3rd and 4th level do we need to. We have that history of working with Microsoft that, again, it's as if it was one company. So, getting to the last slide in the presentation, why Dell Technologies? We have the leadership, we have the credibility, we have the breadth of portfolio, and there's no reason that your confidence as such should not be undermined by coming to work with Dell Technologies in support of Microsoft solutions, defined by Microsoft and delivered on Dell. Thank you. I believe we're going into a break.
Good afternoon. Bit of a different experience for all of us, I suppose, and I think welcome from my side. Maybe by way of introduction, very quickly, my name is Colin Erasmus. Been at Microsoft for many, many years. Recently taken over this new portfolio, and I would typically say to an audience, please, if you have questions, please put your hand up. My understanding is we're running an SMS line, so if there are any specific questions, please SMS those questions to the line. We'll try and answer them now, or we'll get back to you guys afterwards. I think the very first thing for me is Microsoft 365. What is it? You know, we have so many people that have come to us and said, we think it really is where we've taken Windows and Office and put it together in a single package. That's not really what it is. It really is what it says on the screen there. We believe it's the world's productivity cloud. That really is what Microsoft 365 is. And we're going to spend, you'll see on the agenda, there's 2 sessions. We're going to put those 2 sessions together, and we're going to spend about 15 minutes to an hour together explaining the concept of Microsoft 365 and what we mean by the world's productivity cloud. So let me go for it. I'm also going to do some online demos. Let's hope the demo gods are good to us. We're going to do demos as much as we can, also to make this a little bit more interactive. So the first thing I will say, you know, these are 2 words that we do overuse quite a bit, digital transformation, but I have to start here. And I also have to give you 1 or 2 bits of strategic or information to actually explain to you what is really happening. And the very first thing I will say is that if we look at digital transformation, I think the very first thing that says to us that companies are trying to do this, and I think more so with what is going on in the world at the moment, is we are seeing a lot of organizations that we typically wouldn't deem tech organizations actually starting to hire developers. And in fact, the stats today in both South Africa and globally is that we have more non-tech companies hiring developers today than technology companies. And this says to us that our organizations, our companies out there are starting to look for ways to digitally transform their business and to become and remain competitive. And that's critical for us. And that's also one of the reasons why we developed Microsoft 365 was to give these organizations the ability to do it. And I'm going to explain that to you in a second. So here's another thing. You know, if you really want a definition for Microsoft 365, the world's productivity cloud, it really is a set of online services, so cloud services that Microsoft has put together to actually help people digitally transform their business. And that really is what it is at the end of the day. And I want to take a look at this. And in order to explain it, there's 2 ways we explain productivity. The one is around personal productivity, and the other is around organizational productivity. So let's first look at personal productivity. And I'll talk about 2 major trends that are driving personal productivity. And at the end of the day, if we think about ourselves as individuals, it's really about how do we save time, how do we save money potentially, how do we get more done in our week or during the day. And if you think about the word productivity, Microsoft is fairly synonymous. If you take a look at things like Outlook, PowerPoint, Excel, we've been doing this for years. Most people use these products. But really, we wanted to take a step further. There are 2 major factors or 2 major trends around personal productivity that is really taking it to the next level. The first I want to explain to you is AI, is artificial intelligence. Now, we sometimes use this word, I think, a little bit too much, and there's a major difference between artificial intelligence and machine learning, and we need to understand that difference. I'm actually going to show you 1 or 2 demos of how artificial intelligence are actually starting to play a role in personal productivity. And I'm going to do something stupid like show you guys a PowerPoint presentation demo. And I love doing it because a lot of people don't know they have the ability to do this already, but then also couple it back to personal productivity and what it actually means. So that's the first thing, the first major trend. The second major trend around personal productivity is what we call the frontline or the first-line worker. And that really is the person, especially in South Africa, we've got a big retail industry. And that really is the person that is at the coalface, the people that are packing the shelves, the people that are ringing up, people that typically wouldn't have technology available to them well in the past. We believe that there's a major trend where we're starting to look at how we enable these sort of frontline or first-line workers with technology. And that's the other major trend that we're starting to see. Now, organizational productivity is something very interesting. Until we had the cloud, we really spoke about personal productivity. And I'm going to do 1 or 2 demos for you, something called Workplace Analytics and My Analytics, where I'm actually going to show you what organizational productivity looks like and how, by people doing things, we are starting to collect this information. And let me explain this to you. And I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Microsoft Graph, but that really is what this is. So let's explain it. So essentially, we give people experiences on a daily basis. Excel, once again, PowerPoint, Outlook, Word. These are experiences that we give people. As we give people these experiences, they generate data or content. Now, where this has had a major change for us with the invention of the cloud or cloud coming to being is that as we're giving people these experiences and as we're generating content and data, we're also generating and capturing how people are creating this content and interacting with their organizations and interacting with other people. So as opposed to just creating content now, what we're now starting to do is we're starting to figure out how data, how people, how organizations are interlinked. And we're collecting that data and that information. Now, that concept is called the Microsoft Graph, and it is mostly one of the most valuable pieces of data that we give to an organization today. And by doing that, we are able to have a look at things like the experiences that we give our people, how productive they are, and also starting to have a look at how we change our culture of our organizations to better fit what we're after as a company. So that's Microsoft Graph, and that's really how this fits together. And we'll go through a couple of examples of some products and what I mean by this, and actually have a look at some demos. So let's just go to the next slide. So the best example of personal productivity is mostly Microsoft Teams. And we're going to spend a little bit of time today looking at Microsoft Teams and looking at what we are able to give a person today and give an organization today. The other thing that it gives us the availability to do is to define what we call a productivity score. So we are able today, through this Microsoft Graph that I spoke about, to be able to give somebody a productivity score, i.e. how productive are you, how much time do you spend doing email, how much time do you spend interacting with people, how much time do you spend in meetings. And once again, in a couple of minutes, I'll actually show you a demo on this. So before I actually do this, it is worth mentioning that this is something that we pride ourselves on at Microsoft, is that we run on cloud. So Microsoft on trust. So Microsoft 365 runs on trust. There are 4 sections to trust that we look at very specifically. The first one being security. I mean, we're under no illusions that attacks are getting a lot more sophisticated today. If we look at phishing attacks, spear phishing, nowadays, these things are getting very, very complex and very, very professional. The second one is compliance. Now, living in South Africa, a lot of us do business with Europe. GDPR from a compliance point of view becomes critical for us. The same thing with the pending legalization or the impending POPI legalities that will be made available that we're going to have to comply with. The next one is identity. Now, that for us is the basis of trust. We need to make sure that we are able to identify people in order to give them a trusted relationship with what we are doing. And then the last one is privacy. Now, privacy is also just as interesting for us now. For those of you that have been watching the news, you may have noticed that Microsoft South Africa recently won the best employer to work for. One of the major factors of us winning that award was actually privacy. But privacy with our partners, with our customers, but more so for our internal employees. A lot of people forget about this and actually ignore that factor. So look, I think this is the cornerstone of the way we run our cloud. We truly believe that we run on trust. Okay, so you will see that we're going to look at personal productivity the way we spoke about it, and organizational productivity. We'll spend a lot more time on the personal productivity front. And I'm going to let these videos play in the back end, and then I'm actually going to escape and actually do a bit of a demo. So if we look at the Teams overview, for those of you who've never used Teams, this really is a collaborative workspace that we've now enabled for organizations and teams to take benefit from. And as you see the video running, you'll see, for instance, in the Teams thing that you saw there, this is where we define channels. So if you have a team and you're working on a project, you can define a channel. You can define people that belong to that channel. And you can see as that went down, and the demo will be a little bit clearer, you have a calendaring function. So the intent for us at the end of the day, and you also have files and you have calls. You have the ability from a Teams perspective to actually do telephony breakout as well. So you've got the ability to have Teams do your collaboration and your communication in one package. So let's just go a step further here. And I'm going to show you 1 or 2 interesting demos. We'll let these things run. I'll tell you about them, and then we'll actually run the demo. Now, the very first thing is inline translation. Now, for a lot of us today, this may seem like quite a silly feature, if you want to call it that, but let's take a look at Microsoft. Microsoft is a global organization, 150,000 odd employees globally, and just by the pure makeup of Microsoft today, I myself, being an employee there, need to work with people around the world. Not all these people potentially speak English. And this is a feature set that we use quite a bit inside of Microsoft when we are actually working with colleagues abroad that potentially don't speak English or don't speak the same language. So inline translation actually allows us to do on-the-fly translations, and I'll actually show you that. Now, recording meetings is also very critical. As you use Teams and as you get a couple of people together, or as you get a town hall meeting together, so a one-to-many type event, you now have the ability to record these sessions so people can go back and have a look. As you record, this automatically now goes up to Microsoft's streaming platform called Stream. And once again, I'm going to do a demo of that because I know all of you guys use YouTube, almost 100% convinced. And I know the 2 cameramen that are now looking at me use YouTube as well, and they take that slide at the bottom and they look for exactly what they want. And I'm getting a laugh out of them, which is good, which means that I'm not talking nonsense. And I want to show you what Stream has actually done to enable this video content. Joining meetings. So we have the ability straight out of Teams to join meetings. And remember, the intent of Teams is that somebody doesn't leave the Teams experience. Now, I want to show you something that's going on the screen at the moment. The one thing that we have allowed to now do is to actually blur the background, if you look at the screen at the moment, behind you. So if you're doing a video conference, you've got the ability to blur the background. Now, not only do you have that, you've actually got the ability to actually change those backgrounds now. Now, why did we do this, other than a bit of fun? The reason was privacy. So in a lot of instances today, when you're doing a video conference, you may actually have your back towards another colleague. And privacy has become so key for us that we want the ability to actually give you a private environment, even though you're actually on a teleconference. Now, I wouldn't suggest that one inside of Microsoft. You may get some emails from our CEO, but this is the intent. And maybe just to give you a practical example, what Microsoft does is we hire vendors, so we have vendors that work for us. In order for a vendor to work for us and collect data, they need to have a PII certification from us. And one of the things that we actually check with these vendors is that when we dial them or phone them, that we don't have the ability to see any personally identifiable information on their backgrounds or when we phone them and do a video call. So it really is a feature that has come from a privacy standpoint. Magic Whiteboard. So moving on, we have so many people saying to us, but Colin, Teams is an interesting experience because it's an online experience. And we still have people that love to draw. Now I'm like this, I've got to admit that. If I get into a room, I love to draw. The digital or the whiteboard is a whiteboard that you can use within a Teams calling environment where you can actually all contribute onto a virtual whiteboard. So once again, we're taking something out of the physical world that people are comfortable and people love doing and actually bringing it into the virtual world from a Teams perspective. Sharing to Teams. Now, let me ask the question. Most of you today, when you want to send a file, you'll attach the file in an Outlook message, and you'll send it to 10 people. Now, the reality is once we do that, we now have 11 copies of this file floating around. So you've used more bandwidth than what you most probably would have liked. And the other thing is you now have it in your Outlook. So if somebody goes looking for that email, they have to go searching for the email to find the document. And the other thing is that you now have 11 versions of the truth. So you've got the one that you've sent, plus the 10 copies that you've sent out there. What Teams does, it gives you the ability to take that document, so be it an email, and put it into Teams as a conversation, and everyone then can start the conversation around the email as an example. Same thing, I'll show you a demo on that in 1 second. But it really limits people having to find things in Outlook and has a central place where everybody can find things automatically. And that really is the intent of Teams. So just so that I make sure I explain this thing properly, is that it really is a common workplace where everyone can work together, files are kept in the central place, and comments are kept in the central place. You can get to your files, you can have video conferences, and you can have teleconference straight out of Teams. Right, last thing I'll do from playing a video point of view is adding to Teams or adding tabs to Teams. So a lot of us don't just use what we have in Outlook or what we have around us. We use other applications. So social media applications, Power BI applications, and typically if we would have a Teams environment today where we didn't allow those add-ins, you'd once again have to leave Teams and go and find those. What we've given you the ability to do is add those sorts of applications directly into the Teams UI. so you can have everything together in one place. All right, so let's do this. Enough talking. And let's try a bit of a demo. Now, this is a live demo, so I hope the demo gods are okay with us. And the other thing is, this is my live Teams account. So this is my account at Microsoft, so please excuse if anybody's shouting at me about not giving them anything on time. These are the way live demos go. So let's have a look at the first thing. Let's actually have a look at Teams navigation. So what you see at the moment on the left-hand side of the screen is the navigation bar. Now, everything that you see here are actual channels that I've created. These are either projects I'm working on or projects that other people that are working on that I'm part of, and so you can see them. Now, there's a lot of Teams channels that you see here, and I'm going to go through the demo one in a second to show you what I mean and all these videos that we've looked at. So the first thing that you will see is you'll see a lot of channels. So if you're in a medium-sized organization or even a small organization, there are going to be a lot of channels, a lot of projects that you work on. The first thing I will say to you is that here's where the AI starts becoming important. You'll see at the bottom that there are hidden channels. So these are channels that are now hidden for me because I don't go to those chats and those channels very often. And the other thing that I will say, now I know this is difficult and very hard and everybody's sitting there, is you can actually leave a channel. Like a WhatsApp group, I know it's difficult to leave them sometimes, but you can actually leave a channel if you wanted to, so you can go and curate this experience. But there you can see all the channels that I belong to. Now let's go and have a look at one of them specifically. It's this one here called Custom Teams Demo. Now, what I want to do is scroll up. Remember what I said to you is that we can start a conversation with an email. So one of my colleagues has actually done exactly that. There's the email. She's actually put the email into the Teams channel. So you can see the channel there. She's put the email into the channel, and we've got a couple of people that belong to this channel. Now we can start having a conversation without having to leave Teams, without having to go to Outlook. We can start having a real conversation. We've also got the ability to do things like to-do lists straight within the Teams channel. And that quite often happens. So you send an email saying, can so-and-so please do X, Y, and Z. We've now have the ability straight within the Teams thing to do a to-do list without having to leave Teams and actually become unproductive in many instances. The other thing that you can do is surveys. Many of us have done surveys before. We may use Outlook to do surveys. What do? We typically send voting buttons and we have surveys. The thing about that is, once again, I'm leaving my workspace, and I also have no ability to look at it in real time unless I'm the author. Teams gives us the ability to do things like exactly what I spoke about, to do surveys directly within the application and not having to leave the Teams environment itself. Now, here's a video that I posted. So if I do a call, I can automatically record that call and it will automatically record to stream. So this video has been recorded to stream. Now, this is where I want to show you the power of what Stream actually has to offer. So let's just pop out here. Here's the video itself. I'll just play the video very briefly. Let me turn my sound on. I'll play the video very briefly. Okay. And we'll stop that just for 1 second. Okay. Now what I want to show you is that automatically on the right-hand side, I'm getting a transcript. So the transcript's been done automatically. This is not something that somebody has typed. So you can get a full transcript of what is going on in the video. What is a little bit more important, though, is a lot of us view videos in a way where we may be looking for a keyword, or there may be something specific in the video that is important to us. What do? We grab the scroller across the bottom, and we hope we find this thing. We now have the ability to actually search within this transcript. So I know that the word OEM is in this transcript. I'm going to go and search for it. It will find it in the transcript, and now I can go directly to that point in the video where it mentions OEM. So very powerful AI that they've actually now put onto the product to actually allow us to search through content quite quickly and find what we want. They've gone one step further in that sometimes you may be interested in what an individual has to say as opposed to a word within a transcript. So let's have a look here. So if I go to people now, what it does is it automatically has a look at who is speaking where in the video. And I've got the ability to actually, this gentleman over here, to go directly to where this individual is actually speaking and actually play the video from there. So this is what Stream has to offer. It's a product that is built by default into Teams now. And as I said, when you start any video recording, you're starting a video recording of a discussion between you and another colleague, or you and many people, as in a town hall type meeting, this is the platform where the recording goes to. So that's very briefly from a Teams perspective. I want to show you one other thing. Actually, before we go there, before I show you the inline translation, the one thing I do want to show you is the tab over here. Remember I said you've got the ability to add in third-party applications or to add in Power BI reports or whatever it is. So imagine this is a certain project. I now have my team together. Everybody who belongs to this. There's all my files. Remember I spoke to you guys about files and having files. My files on a central location. I don't have to leave teams to go and do this. And the last thing I do want to show you, if it pops up, is how many other applications, so first-party Microsoft applications, third-party applications, your own developed applications, if you're doing your own Power Apps, you can actually add as a tab across the top. You can see all the different tabs there and actually be able to access that directly from within Teams. Now, hopefully I've done a good job from a demo point of view that you can see that this is a workplace where we're trying to pull everything together. The last demo that I do want to show, and let me just quickly find it for 1 second, is this demo here. So I had a colleague send me something in Hindi, and I want to translate that. Now, this is a scenario that happens quite often at Microsoft. So what I would do is I would highlight the piece of text, and this is inline translation. I'm going to go and translate it. This thing translates directly into the language that I've set my teams for. So if I was set to a different language, it would not translate it into English, and I can translate it back. Now, what I also want to show you, something that Microsoft's prided itself on for many, many years, is disability. So people that may have a hearing disability, that may have a sight disability, Microsoft invested in a product many years ago called Shark, and we've incorporated a lot of that technology into Teams and into our other products inside of Microsoft 365. So what I do want to show you now is actually the immersive reader. So it's a screen reader, and essentially what it's going to do is it's going to have a look at the text. And the other thing that I want you to notice is from a cultural point of view, we've also paid attention to the accent of the voice when we're reading different languages. So if I were to play this, you'll hopefully hear, and you guys can hopefully hear online, the English being read out. Now I'm going to stop this for just 1 second, and I'm going to go back, and I'm going to go back to the original message, which is in Hindi. Now, for those of you that are online, and you will actually be able to hear that they use a different immersive reader, and from a cultural point of view, we use a different narrator and a different voice to be a little bit more culturally sensitive. Okay. All right, so I'm going to stop that, and hope you guys all got an idea. So these are just some of the feature sets that we have within Teams, and hope I've done a good job of explaining to you exactly what Teams is. So if we look at personal productivity, this really has made a world of difference to Microsoft internally and to a lot of our partners and customers on a daily basis. And in fact, globally at the moment with some of the stuff that's going on, Teams is being used more and more. Microsoft's put some interesting offers in the market to actually enable people to be able to use Teams while we go through this work from home type scenario at the moment. Okay, so that's Teams. Let's get back to the presentation, and I'll show you. We're almost at the PowerPoint presentation, and I'll actually show you some more interesting stuff. Okay. So staying productive on the go. Now, this is also another major difference from Microsoft 4 or 5 years ago. So if you guys maybe a bit longer, anybody who's been around for quite some time and followed Microsoft, you guys would have known 10 years ago when we released a new product, be it Office or be it Windows, it was very secretive. You'd never know what features were going to be. We'd release a product every 3 years or so. We don't do that anymore. We actually release the product on the go. We are always creating new feature sets. And in fact, if you go online today, you can actually see Microsoft's major release dates, and you can see the features that are coming up. The other thing that you can do is request the feature. Now, let me let this thing play, and I'll explain it as it goes. One of the most requested features that we had is the ability to take a table that's been printed and be able to convert that. Now, I know I've done this before. I have a table. There you see the table that's been printed, and I want this thing in Excel. And in the past, I would have typed it out. What we now have, and this is within the Office mobile app, is I have the ability to take a picture, and this exists today, by the way, and it will automatically translate or automatically decode that and take it directly into Excel for us, so without you having to retype. So once again, when we talk about personal productivity, this is really what we're talking about. How do we make somebody more productive? Even if it's a simple example like that, taking something that is printed that would have maybe taken me half an hour to retype, that I can now do within 2 to 3 minutes. You can see the Teams example as well. We're giving a lot of time back. And in fact, Microsoft's research that we've done internally is we believe that we've given every employee, if you use this properly, about 8 hours back a week in productivity if you use Teams correctly. That was one of the examples. Let's have a look at some of the AI. So I mentioned artificial intelligence within personal productivity. So this one example that I'm going to show you now, won't do a demo, but the video will play, is Excel Ideas. Once again, this exists within Microsoft 365. So if you've got an Office 365 subscription or a Microsoft 365 subscription, this will already be available. Now, how many of us have had Excel data before in the past, and we just don't know how to graphically or visually represent this thing? So what we do is we go to the chart functionality and we start looking at different charts. Is it a pie chart? Is it a bar chart? Is it a scatter graph? Whatever it may be, how does it best be represented? So we now have something in Excel called Ideas, and I'll let this thing play so we have a bit of data. I'll go to Ideas, and what AI now does, it automatically goes and has a look at the data and starts generating graphs and ideas based on the data that it is seeing. And the example that you see there is you'll actually see that it's even picked out the fact that there's 2 outliers in the data and has actually changed the graph to be a scatter plot, highlighting those 2 outliers. So this is once again how we start bringing AI into personal productivity. And think about how this would have been in the past. I would have spent, maybe not hours, but I would have spent minutes trying to figure out what the best way was to actually represent the data. We're now giving you ideas to do that. And this will sort of lead us now into the PowerPoint presentation. And I'm actually going to stop this, and I'm actually going to escape and do the demo. So let's go and let's hope this works. So we've all done this before. And I can't see hands in the room, but I hope you all have a bit of a smile. We've all had to put a PowerPoint presentation before from scratch. And typically what we would do is we'd start with what you're seeing at the moment. We'd start with a text presentation. So we'd go and bullet point things on a slide, and then we decide we actually want to bring in some images to make this thing look pretty. Okay, so personal productivity once again. So we have something called design ideas. So here's a title slide of a presentation. I have some pictures. I'm going to go and insert that picture. Okay, so I have these things already set up. So there's the picture. And watch what happens now. As I insert the picture, PowerPoint automatically goes and looks for design ideas, and will actually go and bring up design ideas on the right. So let's choose this one. So there's my first title slide done. Without me having to actually physically go and do it, I stick the picture on the page, stick the text on the page, and design ideas will automatically go and look for me. And you'll see there's a couple of design ideas that this thing has come up with, so you can choose how you want this to look. Now it goes a step further in that it identifies things like lists. So let's have a look at this slide 4, which is lists. So same thing, design idea goes and has a look and says, hang on, this is a list. And I know this is maybe a list that goes 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is, and there's the design idea once again. Now, something like this would have taken us minutes, hours in the past to do. And let me show you one last one before I do another PowerPoint demo. So this is one of my favorite ones because I do this quite often. Say I've got 3 or 4 pictures on a single slide, and I don't know how to put it together that it looks pretty. So let's have a look at what design ideas will go and do for us. So I'm going to take all the pictures that I have here. So insert pictures, and this is going to take all of them, and I'm going to put these things on the slide. And design ideas will take a little longer, and we'll actually go and have a look through these slides and go, there's an idea for you to actually make this look quite nice and look presentable. So if we talk about personal productivity, this is a very simple demo of PowerPoint. This is within Microsoft 365, exists already. This is my stock standard PC that I use at work. You guys, if you have, as I said, if you have this, you have the ability to do it. But it comes down to personal productivity again. When we talk about the world's productivity cloud, Microsoft 365, I think it's a very good demonstration of how we're actually starting to save people money and time. I want to look at one more PowerPoint presentation because this one's always quite fun. And for this presentation, I'm going to be Mrs. Roberts for a second. So imagine I'm a science teacher, and I have a presentation on the solar system. So this presentation already doesn't look too bad, actually. So if I scroll through the presentation, it actually looks quite nice. But once again, I can get it to look even better. Now, AI is going to go through this and go through and recognize those common objects in the presentation. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to go and add a transition onto this presentation called Morph. And let's go and play this thing. And we just got to give this thing a second once it actually loads up. And have a look at the difference between the first presentation. So there you can already see the difference. So what it will now do is it will now step through the planets in a more immersive way. And same thing once again, making it a lot more professional and making it very quick to do it. So that is the last PowerPoint presentation or demo. I do want to show you one other thing around presentation skills. Now, this is something that we use quite effectively inside of Microsoft. So somebody who has an organization who does a lot of presentations. We used to, at Microsoft, we used to invest quite a bit of time in presentation skills. So training our presenters how to present. We use this functionality extensively. Now, the one thing I will say that you need to have hairs on your chest because she can get quite nasty. As you go through this, you'll hear, but it's actually a presentation coach. So I'm going to play this thing, and this is somebody that actually now goes and starts a presentation, and they want the presentation coach to help them. So we're going to start the presentation, and as you go through this, and hopefully you guys can hear this online, you'll see as the person speaks and as they use the words the presentation coach hears that and actually starts prompting you to say, don't use fillers like Now, it's terrible when you do a presentation like this because now I'm very aware that I say and it's going to become a bit weird. But you'll also see that the presentation coach has picked up the fact that you're reading the slide. And there's nothing worse going to a presentation and somebody's actually reading the slide. And it will do things like tell you that words, phrases like "you guys" may not be correct, or reading the slide may not be the right thing to do. So that's the presentation coach. Once again, exists today. You talk about saving time. You talk about saving money as an organization, sending people on presentation skills. I don't think it'll ever take it away 100%, but it does allow you as an organization to actually skill your staff up quite a bit, and you personally as well. So that sort of is the personal productivity, and I hope I've given you a sense of just what Microsoft 365 has to offer and what the personal cloud means to us and what productivity really does mean to us at the end of the day. I'm going to switch gears for a second, and I'm going to have a chat about organizational productivity. Now, this is really where it becomes quite interesting. So I spoke about the Microsoft Graph early on and how we start collecting information between what people do on a daily basis, but how they do it, who they interact with. Now, that's where organizational productivity really comes to the fore. So the first thing I want to show you guys is harnessing organizational knowledge, and that is workplace analytics. And I'm actually going to do a demo on this, and as you see this thing roll, actually let me speak through this because this is quite interesting. We do something at Microsoft called a QBU or QBR. So this is a process where we go through a quarterly business review process, and you'll see that the demo that they're showing you at the moment is we can actually, as HR, as a manager, actually go and pick up the word QBR, and what it'll do is it'll actually start going through all of our emails, all of our meeting requests, and actually go and show you just how much time people have spent on things like QBR inside your organization. And this actually allows you to make some interesting changes. Now, Microsoft used to do this thing called mid-year review many years ago, which really was a review process, a mid-year review process, and we would spend hours preparing for it. Through things like workplace analytics, we actually came to learn that the man hours that were being used to create these PowerPoint presentations and reviews actually just wasn't worth the return. So we actually made use of this technology ourselves to make some cultural changes and some organizational changes. So let me actually show you. I'm going to once again go and do a very quick demo, and let's hope this works. And I'm going to start with My Analytics. So these two go hand in hand. So workplace analytics is around the workplace. My Analytics is around me as a person. So you will see the demo at the moment up in front of you. So every Monday morning, every Microsoft employee, and if you use this product, you also potentially get this, gets an email around My Analytics. So it actually tells me what my week was like. So let's just have a look at this. So it'll actually tell me, for instance, that I spend 29 hours in the week, so it's a 40-hour week or a 50-hour week. I spent 29 hours collaborating. And that collaboration was in email and was in meetings. And how does it do this? It actually goes through your mailbox and actually allows you to do that. And focus time of 11.5 hours. So it actually says to you spent 30-odd hours actually collaborating with people, and you spent 11-odd hours focusing and actually doing potentially what you needed to do. Now, I know we all get into that situation where we have to answer the email, but we all want a bit of focus time so we can answer the email correctly. So this thing really starts helping you actually mold your day and get better at what you're doing. The other interesting thing it does, and there's a lot in this, and I won't show you everything. The other interesting thing that it does, it actually shows you who the top collaborators were for the week. So it shows you who the individuals were that you sent the most emails to, or you spent the most time with from a meeting point of view. And so it goes, and there's a lot that it actually has. And it actually comes back and it can offer you suggestions. It can offer you suggestions like you may need more focus time, as an example. So that's My Analytics. It's showing me what I'm doing on a daily basis. Let's have a look at how this bubbles up from a workplace point of view. So here's workplace analytics. So now this is where Microsoft Graph really becomes important. So it's now tracking how you do things, how you spend your day. and you measure a certain subset of your employees. So in this instance, in this demo, there's 10,000 odd employees that have been measured within this control group. It shows you the amount of collaboration hours, but now it actually goes into a fair amount of detail. So let's look at the week in the life. So it now starts telling you things like you're spending 9.5 hours on email during that week, and you're spending 8.9 hours in the calendar or meeting during that week. And then it really starts having a look at some interesting stats. Here's an interesting one, after hours collaboration. So the very first thing that I will say is that Microsoft is starting to drive a culture, or we want to drive a culture of work-life balance, that people need to have a balance between life and work. I know that's always tricky, especially in today's day and age. But the one thing that we don't want our managers to do, as an example, or it's something that we're trying to stop them to do, is to send an email after hours. So I'll send an email to you at 8 in the evening or 9 in the evening, and there's then that expectation that an employee that reports to that manager needs to answer them by 9 in the evening or 10 in the evening, because that's just the way life is sometimes. So we're trying to stop those sorts of cultures. So once again, you can see things like workplace analytics give me the ability to start having a look at my culture inside my organization and how I actually work. Very, very interesting. So let's go back home, and I'll show you one or two others. There's the meeting overview. So it's actually going to show you hours that you spent in meeting. So this is actually quite an interesting one. So low quality meeting hours. So it actually shows you where you're meeting and what you're meeting. And in some instances, it actually also shows you whether you may have picked up a device inside your meeting. Because we have Teams on our phones, on our mobile devices, we've got the ability to check that if you were in a meeting, that you maybe weren't paying attention in the meeting. So same thing, it's not meant to be an HR tool. It's meant to be a workplace analytics tool that you can actually better yourself and your organization. The last one I do want to show you is this one here as an example, managing and coaching. So one thing that we try to do at Microsoft as well is we're trying to encourage our managers to coach the employees. So to make people better and to equip them with the tools that they need. So once again, what you can see there is an example of hours spent in coaching or in managing one-on-one situations with employees. So I think I gave you just a taste of it, but gave you an idea, hopefully, of what workplace analytics is. And when we talk about Microsoft Graph, what Microsoft Graph actually gives us, really does give us the ability to look deeply and introspectively into our organizations, what we're doing and how we can actually make changes and how we can save time or even change the culture of the organization itself. So that really is workplace analytics at the end of the day, and as well as my analytics. So let's go on to protecting the organization. Now, there's plenty that I can share with this, with you guys around this. The first thing I do want to share, and the one thing I will share on security, and JK spoke about it, was Sentinel. So this is something fairly recent from Microsoft. It is a native cloud management tool where you've got the ability to actually manage all your third-party data sources, all your applications. It gives you the ability to manage things like incidents, and as this thing plays in the background, you'll actually see the connectors, the 37 connectors. And the example that this thing looks at is it looks at a multi-attack vector. So it goes and has a look at where we've identified an attack inside the organization, and you see once it clicks on it, there's a multi-attack vector. Somebody tried to log on that shouldn't have logged on, and we also had a malicious attack from a network and IP address that we didn't like. And as you can see, it actually goes down to a point of view of actually identifying the individual that was potentially targeted. And then as this thing goes through, you'll actually see it gives us the ability to actually go and put rules in place to actually stop these sorts of attacks. So this is really just the tip of the iceberg for us. But Sentinel gives us that. It's not a product. It really is a workplace monitoring application native to the cloud that allows us to actually go and look at our organization end to end from a security point of view, and really in a couple of seconds be able to give us a security landscape and what is going on and allow us to mitigate a lot of these risks. So that really is Sentinel. I'll say a couple of things about compliance because I think this is important to us. We spoke about the productivity score. We now have the ability to do things like give compliance scores. So we've got a product called the Compliance Manager. We've mapped things like GDPR. So if you're living in Europe or even in South Africa, Microsoft's actually mapped the GDPR regulation to the Compliance Manager and actually gives us the ability to now give an organization a compliance score based on that mapping and based on how you present yourself within the organization. We are currently busy actually doing this for Poppy. That should be done in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So from a South African point of view, we'll be able to give you guys through Compliance Manager, a view of your compliance of your organization. This one I'll do a bit of a demo on. Automatic data classifications are really, once again, just touching on the iceberg of what Microsoft 365 has to offer. But automatic data classification is something that has become key to us. So in this example, what you will see is if somebody puts in a credit card into a document, the document will automatically be classified. And I'm going to show you how that works in Teams. In fact, let me do that now quickly. So it doesn't just work on a document. You can extend this policy to Teams. So let's say I'm having a Teams conversation and I, by accident or I maliciously put a credit card into that conversation, we'll automatically pick that up. And you'll see that will automatically be classified and the actual content be removed off the conversation. This happens automatically. You define these up front. So also by way of demonstration very quickly, if I come in here, let me just find it for you guys quickly. So this one has been set up as an example to look for the word confidential. So if I'm typing a document, and same as the credit card example, and I type the word confidential, you will see, if I spelled it right, you will see automatically this document is going to get, and you'll see it appear at the top of the browser there, is automatically actually going to get permissions attracted to it. So I now have restricted access, and there's only certain people that can actually view this document inside my organization when I send it out. So that's what we mean by conditional formatting, or when we actually do automated document classification. And there's a lot that you can do around this as one of the examples. So if you talk about identity, that's one thing, but we also want to make sure that we're protecting the documentation should identity fail at the end of the day. All right. Almost at the end, yeah. And we've spoken about that, and really what's next is left is next steps. So the examples that I've hopefully given you has shown you how Microsoft 365, so once again, not just Office and Windows put together, it's a bunch of product sets, a bunch of cloud services that have been put together to actually allow people to realize their digital transformation agendas as an organization. We've gone through personal productivity, and Teams is a very good example of that, even though I've showed you some PowerPoint demos. You talk about personal productivity, we want to save you time. That really is what it's about. I think the demos that I did showed you that Teams shows you that you can have everything in one place at a time. You don't have to leave it. And then when we look at organizational productivity, security is obviously critical because if you go down, there's productivity out the window. But we've had a look at things like workplace analytics. And remember, these are just examples. It's the tip of the iceberg at the end of the day. And what I want to leave you with on the screen at the moment is there are a lot of tools, there are a lot of ROI calculators to have a look at. And then we have a fast track program. We've got a bunch of partners that actually help you, and Microsoft people that actually help you get on the right track from a security point of view. So hopefully it was useful. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to invite Grant up so that we can say goodbye together. But thank you very much for joining. Yes, that's good.
Thank you very much for joining, everyone. I think this is really interesting. Some great capabilities from Microsoft, and I learn every time I see Colin present. So thank you, Colin. Thank you very much for your time today. And please, if you've got any questions, you'd like to know more, please reach out to your account manager. Thanks for your time. Keep healthy, keep safe, and have a good day. Thank you. We're done. Cool. Thanks, guys.